Good morning, everyone. Thank you, sir, for this warm welcome, and I welcome you all also to today's sessions. I hope we can do justice to your precious time, like sir was saying. The two of us, we've tried our level best to cover whatever has been given to us. However, if there are a few things which are not able to address it, do be kind to us, alright? Okay, so, like sir said, and I'm interacting with our trainee judicial officers. This is their third round of training on Domestic Violence Act. What about our magistrates? Second, Sijan, Ms. Rohini, I'm sure you all have. Yeah. Our protection officers, apparently? Oh, wonderful to hear that. What about the others? Or who? First time? Could you please introduce yourselves? I'm so sorry, we don't really know the protection officers. Namchi Bharat, protection. What about you? If you could give your name and could you please have the mic? We can't really hear.
My name is Sonam and I'm from Mangan district.
Great, thank you. Sorry, okay. Welfare inspector. Okay, alright. Legal officer? Okay, then we have someone. Okay, alright. What about you now? OS. Okay, alright. I hope what we are teaching now is useful for you then. Alright, okay? Okay. And yeah, right? The biggie one, sir. Steno. Oh my God. Okay. Steno, office attendant, and Madam Maru. I hope, like legal officer, yes, I can understand to an extent. But I hope we don't waste the very good time today. Anyway, I welcome you all also. Now let's just start it. The Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act. Sir gave a brief introduction on the topic, why, how, all that. Now the first thing which comes to our head, since we have newbies here, let's be patient. What is the Domestic Violence Act? Now the Supreme Court, they've defined the act as, number one, an act to protect women from being victims of domestic violence, DV, and also to prevent occurrence of domestic violence in society. So to protect and to prevent. That is the purpose of the DV Act. And then if you go through, if you go through the Bare Act को statements of objects and reasons of the Act also. It's in the first page, introduction one is. Now if you go through it, serial number 3, it says that it is therefore proposed to enact a law keeping in view the rights guaranteed under Articles 14, 15 and 21 of the Constitution. Now 14 panikyo. What is 14? Correct. 15? Correct. And 21? Yeah. So basically this act, from the statements of objects and reasons and from the judgment of the Supreme Court, it's very clear. Number one, to ensure equality of women, to protect them from domestic violence, and to ensure that they are not victims of domestic violence. Alright? Now the next thing which comes to our head is your domestic violence. Like in Nepali we say, Gharelu Hinsa. What is this Gharelu Hinsa? Like when you don't go through the act, the first thing which comes to your head. Yeah, because that's something which is seen in the movies, right? Which we've seen, oh, you are a victim of domestic violence, means Dulai di Rayakol, right? Is that the only form of domestic violence? No, you are not allowed to answer. Protection officers. Is that the only form of domestic violence? The case is handled on Bako alike, na? Sushila, you're not allowed to. What else is domestic violence? Now, if you go through section 3, it defines what domestic violence is. Domestic violence is indeed physical abuse, but it also includes sexual abuse. It also includes mental abuse. All right? Section 3 तपाईहरु एक बताइरहेको छ तपाईहरु त्यहाँ छ DV Act हेर्नुस् त Physical abuse, I think all of us, we can understand what physical abuse is, correct? Now, what is emotional abuse or mental abuse? Can someone from there give me an example? Not my magistrates. What is mental abuse? I can see you all. So you can just tell me. If you don't know, you don't know. You can just tell me. Interactive करूँ ना. Mental too. Like a basic example which we give in our awareness programs also. आँखा लाउनु क्यों? आँखा लाउँछ नि. Like your husband ले. तिमी चाहिँ त्यो दाजुको दोकानी किन गएको? मुसुक हाँसिरहेको थियो तिमी त्यहाँ. Like even though the wife might have just gone to buy something. That is, and usually advocates are application to garदाखेरि eye putting भन्छ आँखा लाउनु. Literal translation, eye putting. आँखा लाउनु is a basic example of mental abuse. All right, and the third one is your economic abuse. What is economic abuse? Like financial abuse. What can be an example of economic abuse? Like husband or anyone in the house ले चाहिँ हातपात गर्दैन अरे मुख पनि राम्रैसित बोल्छ अरे हैन So what is economic abuse? But then economically पुरै abuse हुँदैछ. What is it? You are not allowed. So economic abuse would be usually husband wife. The wife is a homemaker. काम गर्नु हुँदैन अरे बाहिर. घरमै उहाँ चाहिँ घर सम्हाल्नुहुन्छ. अब घर सम्हाल्नु लागि लुगा धुनुलाई के चाहियो? साबुन, डिटर्जेन्ट. खाना पकाउनुलाई के चाहियो? तेल, सब्जी, चामल. If the husband fails to give money, fails to extend financial help, त्यति बेला हुन्छ financial abuse. The husband is supposed to give money. You are a homemaker. तपाईं आफ्नो के छैन आफ्नो पुँजीबाट. So that is an example of economic abuse. So whenever we talk about domestic violence, it's not like just physical violence or mental violence. It's a very broad term. Anything can be domestic violence. Anything. All right. Even the section, explanation 2 of this section says. I'll just read it out. Whether any act, omission, commission or conduct of the respondent constitutes domestic violence under this section, the overall facts and circumstances of the case shall be taken into consideration. So you'll have to bear in mind the entire case, the entire facts. It's not just like a piecemeal. एकखेप यस्तो भएछ पक्का domestic violence हो हैन. हिस्ट्रीहरु के थियो? पहिला के भएको थियो? जम्मै हेरेर चाहिँ okay, you have to be, as magistrates, you have to be satisfied, as protection officers, you all have to be satisfied that it is a genuine case of domestic violence. Alright? Section 3, please read it again and again and again for you all to understand whether a particular incident or whether the case falls under the purview of this act. Now, who can claim the reliefs under this act? It's very clear. You have to be aggrieved. तपाईलाई domestic violence को victim हुनु पर्यो. त्यसलाई भन्छ in the act aggrieved person. Section 2A ले define गर्दैछ. Now what is this aggrieved person? As per the act, protection of women भन्दैछ नि. Number 1, woman only. Okay? Any woman who's going through or who has been, okay, in a domestic relationship. Now what is this domestic relationship? That also we look into. So a woman who has been or is in a domestic relationship with the respondent and who alleges to have been subjected to any of the domestic violence as defined in section 3 by the respondent. So the victim, the woman, has to be in a domestic relationship with the respondent, and it is the respondent who is subjecting the victim to domestic violence. Alright? Now, Isma, you see domestic relationship. Now what is domestic relationship? What do you think is domestic relationship? Open to everyone. Section 2F defines domestic relationship. Okay? When you're living together, at some point of time you were living together or you're still living together in a shared household, when they're related by consanguinity, relatives, marriage, or through a relationship in the nature of marriage, adoption, or are family members living together as a joint family. When the two individuals are living together, okay, in a shared household. Now what is a shared household? Shared household. Household the busnu bhayo hala. God, correct? What is a shared household? Correct. So now, with regard to now, shared household is also defined in section 2S. Okay? Now it says that a household where the person aggrieved, the victim, lives or at any stage has lived in a domestic relationship. So the respondent and the victim should have lived at some point of time, or they still live in that house. So that's a shared household. Now with regard to shared household, I'll get the extra, I'll tell you all, okay? Now Isma, have you heard of this? I'm sure my magistrates have heard. I'm sure you will rely on this judgment only, correct? So the definition of shared household, Satish Chandra Ahuja versus Neha Ahuja, protection officers, you need to understand this, okay? Because so many times cases where like, you know, then you think, DV because they're supposed to have a shared household here. Now this Satish Chandra, it defines what a shared household is. It says that the definition of shared household is exhaustive. Okay? And with regard to this, at any stage, means a household where the person aggrieved lives, or at any stage has lived. Now what do you mean by at any stage has lived? This was causing a lot of trauma to the magistrates as well as to the protection officers. What do you mean by at any stage has lived in a domestic relationship? Now, for example, if the husband is a banker, bank makam gar sari, national bank makam gar desari, any minute you may be stationed in Siliguri, to Calcutta, to Guwahati, to Delhi, anywhere. So along with that, our family also moves, the wife and the kids also move. So say the person is posted in Siliguri for 1 month, then immediately another posting order comes where the person is posted in Guwahati. Then Guwahati ma 2-3 mahina. Is that also, does that come within the definition of at any stage has lived in a domestic relationship? Now if you think about it, lived in a domestic relationship at a particular place, even these choto, wherever they stayed for a short period, does that also come under shared household? That was an issue which was haunting the judiciary as well as haunting the protection officers. Now the Satish Chandra Ahujale, it's put to rest that. It says, mere fleeting or casual living at different places shall not make a shared household. Alright? The Supreme Court further held that it has to be given, this at any stage has lived in a domestic relationship, has to be given a normal and purposeful meaning. तपाईहरुले इन्टरप्रेट गर्दाखेरि बुझ्दिँदाखेरि चाहिँ यस्तो पर नबुझ्नुस् कि कन्फ्युजन होस्, कम्प्लिकेट गरोस् त्यो केसलाई हैन. Try to give a meaningful interpretation to it. If short period ko लागि ho भने, no need to consider that as a shared household. Alright? That is what the Supreme Court held in Satish Chandra Ahuja. Now in Satish Chandra Ahuja, it further expanded the definition of a shared household. Earlier, respondent bandakeri. यहाँ तपाईहरुले मैले तपाईहरुलाई भने that who is an aggrieved party? Aggrieved party bandakeri चाहिँ section 2A ले भन्दैछ कि I'm sorry, respondent definition गर्दाखेरि नि, if you go to section 2Q, it says any adult male person who is or has been in a domestic relationship with the aggrieved person and against whom the aggrieved person has sought any relief. So in your section le bhandesa, respondent has to be any adult male member. Now when this adult male member interpret garnu paryo calls her line, that was causing a lot of inhibition, a lot of problem to extend relief to the victim woman under this act. Because so many times we saw that husband le matra haina, husband ko sister, husband ko mother, husband ko aunt, uhaharu pani they are also perpetrators of domestic violence. The Supreme Court acknowledged this, and they removed this adult male. So now respondent includes male as well as female. Now your respondent code, I hope protection officers, please keep that in mind. Respondent doesn't only mean male. Respondent also includes now female. Now that being the case, now Satish Chandra Mate, in this case what had happened was, there was husband and wife, husband unaru chutyo, but then the wife was staying in that marital home, that matrimonial home, okay? So she was staying on one floor, her in-laws were staying in another floor. Oh? Her in-laws, let's say, they filed a case against the victim saying that यो जुन चाहिँ छ यो घर त उहाँको बुढाको नाममा पनि हैन, ओके? त्यो घर चाहिँ फादर इन लको नाममा थियो. So now by virtue of that, she cannot be allowed residence in this building. किन बुढाको केही छैन भनेर. So that's when the Supreme Court in this case, in Satish Chandra only, it's a landmark case where you shared household say उनीहरुले यति साह्रो expand गरिदिएको छ, even if the घर चाहिँ बुढाको नाममा हैन अरे, property बुढाको नाममा हैन अरे, still it is considered as shared household under the definition of 2S. Satish Chandra ma हेर्नुस् ल. Alright? Okay, moving on. Live-in relationship. Live-in relationship तपाईहरुले बुझ्नुहुन्छ? Live-in relationship भने के हो भनेर? What is live-in relationship? I'd like to hear my protection officers and officers from the departments. When you're living together, you're not married but living together, and the relationship is in the nature of husband and wife, correct? बिहा गरेको छैन तर तपाईहरु as husband and wife you are living together. So live in relationship. So as per this judgment of the Supreme Court, live in relationships ma pani like the woman can seek for reliefs under the DV Act. And then what are the criteria? What is a live-in relationship criteria? Say this judgment enumerates. के हो के हैन भनेर. All right? Do you prove that you are in a live-in relationship? The aggrieved party, the woman, has to prove through evidence. Evidence से दिनै पर्यो. All right? Now what about status of keep? Keep भन्ने बुझ्नुहुन्छ? Keep भने के हो? I'm married, Okay, I'm a male, I'm married, and I have a girlfriend. Okay, and then now to support my girlfriend, my pocket money दिइराख्छु छु, घुम्नु पनि पठाइराख्छु छु, घुम्नु पनि गइराख्छु छु. Alright? But I have my wife there. The relationship, and that is a keep. Okay? Now a keep, do you think a keep is entitled? Whether or not a keep is entitled or not, बिहा गरेको छैन अरे त उनीहरुसँगै बसिराख्छ अरे, त्यतिबेला please look into these your ingredients. Whether they were living as husband and wife, and whether the society. So समाजले नि उनीहरु बुढाबुढी नै हो, सँगै बस्दैछ बुढाबुढी नै हो भनेर. Correct? Live-in relationship को यो सबै हेर्नु पर्यो. They are of legal marriage age, they should qualify to enter into marriage. मतलब एकाअर्काको चाहिँ हाम्रो के रे husband wife हुनु भएन. Correct? And they must live together in a shared household, and they must have voluntarily cohabited for a significant period of time. सँगै बस्नु पर्यो धेरै समयको लागि. Now keep will not come under this definition because number one, society does not accept them as husband and wife.
Point 3 as well.
Correct. They already have. I have a wife and I have a girlfriend also. So you think you fall under that definition? No. Correct. And then, do you think they share a household? No. And then they do not even cohabit together because I already have a life partner. So a keep cannot, a woman who is in such a relationship cannot come for relief under the DV Act. Please keep that in mind. What about same-sex partners? Nowadays we hear a lot about LGBTQIA, the queer community, gay, lesbian. As per the judgment of the Supreme Court, you cannot seek for relief under this act. Alright? Now, with regard to the definition of respondent, I've already mentioned. Now, respondent can also be a female in a domestic relationship with the aggrieved party. Now, whether or not, who can come for relief? Aggrieved person. Now, aggrieved person meaning woman, domestic relationship with the respondent, and the respondent must have inflicted that violence upon the victim. Please keep that in mind. Definition section you all will understand. And the most important is, what is an act of domestic violence? Like a one-off incident where the husband, gets really angry. Oh, कि दालमा नुन कम्ती भयो रे, सब्जी सारै पिरो बनायो रे, अलिकति गाली खुवायो रे. Is that a case of domestic violence? Is that? If it continues, every day, yes, that's mental abuse. That is a case of domestic violence. But one-off incidents, so you need to consider the entire case scenario. How long has it continued? All that. Then you can decide whether it is a case of domestic violence or not. Please keep that in mind. Husband and wife or don't start jumping into action and then okay, we need to report it immediately. Alright? Okay, now refusal of relief. Who can be refused? Now this is now this is very clear. When the aggrieved person fails to show that she is an aggrieved person, fails to prima facie prove her case of domestic violence. Alright? As protection officers and as magistrates, you need to be satisfied that, okay, this is a genuine case of domestic violence. Number two, when the applicant does not fall within the definition of aggrieved person, like I said, same-sex partners, keep, and for that matter, even domestic helps. Domestic helps, they do not share a domestic relationship with the respondent. So which is why domestic helps do not come under the DV Act. Then domestic relationship, consequently, so therefore domestic relationship must be proved by the aggrieved party. Now when the court has no jurisdiction, Section 27 talks about jurisdiction of the court. जब court को jurisdiction नै छैन त्यति बेला कसरी relief दिनु? All right? Can I move on? If you peruse through the Act, this is something which everyone knows. I think the protection officers, have you all handled cases? So Shiva, you handled it. Now what about the others? Handled on Vatsa? Okay. Now, whenever there's a problem, a woman faces problem, Gorma, firstly, from those basic Hindi movies only you can see Gorma nikal dinsa, correct? So residential order. Like it's like you just play a Hindi movie in your head, then automatically it comes to you. Residential order. Hard path launch hai na, physical abuse. So you grant protection order. And then, like I said, husband is angry with the wife, and then they stop giving paisa. So that's when you seek for monetary help, monetary order. Then Nani Sari. The easiest way to target a woman is separate the child from the mother. So that's when the custody order comes into play. And then, हाथ पात गर्दाखेरि चोट लाग्नेले medical जानु पर्छ, खर्च हुन्छ. So that's when compensation order comes. And then घरबाट निकाले अरे केही गर्नु छैन अरे, the woman is helpless, प्राय helpless भएर नै, that's when they come to us. त्यति बेला what can we do immediately? So interim, while the application case हुँदैछ, interim बिचमा चाहिँ हामी के गर्न सक्छ? Interim relief र ex parte orders in absence of those people, the respondents. त्यो पनि the court has been given the power and the applicants have been given this relief. Alright? तपाईहरुले यो DV Act पढ्नु भएको छ, the protection officers. I hope you know what residential order is. Yeah? Now execution, see it's very simple. Now how do you execute these orders? Execution of the protection order, section 31 of the DV Act. What is section 31? Can one of you read it? Section 31 clear? Anyone? Hello?
Order by respondent. Subsection 1. A breach of protection order or of an interim protection order by the respondent shall be an offence under this Act and shall be punishable with imprisonment of either description for a term which may extend to 1 year or with fine which may extend to 20,000 rupees or with both.
Okay, stop. Thank you. Thank you. Alright. So the protection order, magistrate or protection order by, correct? But then the husband or whoever the family member is such that he violates that order, that protection order. So now, Tisma, what can you do? What can the woman do? The woman can come and seek for, report it to the court, and then section 31, 1 later, it allows for the court to punish the person up to 1 year, or with fine, or both. Alright? Then the next one is section 19.7. What is section 19.7? Order violate गर्यो भने तपाईहरुले सिधा recourse section 31 मा आउन सक्नुहुन्छ. Number 2, 19.7. Protection order दियो courtबाट, but still the woman is scared. ला मलाई हिर्काउँछ होला. I'm feeling very unsafe. Then त्यति बेला त्यो order चाहिँ SHO, the local SHO जो छ, उहाँलाई पनि copy of the order is sent, so that in case anything happens, हातपात लगाइहाल्यो भने the police can extend the protection. Alright? त्यहाँदेखि rule 15 of the DV rules. This is very important for the protection officers. Rule 15 of the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Rules, 2006. breach of protection orders, an aggrieved person may report a breach of protection order or an interim protection order to the protection officer. Then the rule talks about KKC Garnuparni. Alright? So as protection officers, please keep in mind your Rule 15. Rule 15 gives you all the power, the authority. Alright? So this is with respect to protection order. Then comes residence order. Now residence order, the relevant provisions are 19.3, 19.5 and 19.7 of the Act. It may require the respondent to execute bond to prevent commission of domestic violence. This is something as magistrates, I'm sure we have been doing it. Ms. Jola, I'm sure you have been doing it, correct? And then comes protection order, like I said, 19.5, protection order for implementation of this order of residence. And then 19.7 is, magistrate may order the SHO to assist in implementation of this order. Residential order got the case prior. The woman say, God burn is scary because husband is like, I'm just giving a basic example, husband and wife, that's the easiest, okay. Now, husband is a terror, physically abused gari raheko. Now the woman has to go back to the house. Say, nani ko admission time ma birth certificate chahiye or afnai Aadhaar card chahiye. Tytibela how to go back to the house. So that's when the magistrate may order the SHO to assist in implementation of this order. How? Go back to the house, get the concerned documents, etc. Alright? Then comes, this is maintenance. Maintenance, section 24. Copy of the order is given to the parties as well as sent to the local police station where the respondent resides. Alright? And section 26 talks about cases where there's a breach of the maintenance. Custody garsa. Like say this section, I feel section 26, it's useful when the respondent is in a working for some company or in the government, you know. If the respondent fails to give the maintenance within that stipulated time, then the magistrate can pass an order saying that directing the employer of the respondent to give that whatever amount directly to the woman, the aggrieved party. In a prior, so I think this, even my experienced learning magistrates will also agree. And I think Ms. Sushila also, you've faced a lot of cases, correct? We give the relief, as magistrates we give the relief, but it becomes very difficult execution stage, especially when it comes to maintenance. Husband le bhancha paisa chaina. Husband le bhancha mero nama kehi pani chaina, sabai joint family property ho. And that's when, like, you know, you don't know what to do. However, if the husband happens to be working for someone, for the government, we can take recourse to section 26. Alright? Now, I'm sure you all have heard of Rajnesh versus Neha. Yeah? Did you all discuss it the last time? Huh? Naike? Have you all used this judgment? Okay. There were a couple of, like these were the directions passed by the Honorable Supreme Court. Alright. Even the Supreme Court realized that there's a lot of problem faced by the magistrates when it comes to the Domestic Violence Act, when it comes to reliefs given to the aggrieved party under the Act. Now, they also acknowledge the fact that there is overlapping of jurisdiction. What is overlapping of jurisdiction? Like for example, maintenance. Maintenance, you give it, the aggrieved party can claim under the DV Act, correct? As you all know. You can also claim it under the Special Marriage Act, okay? You can also claim it under the Hindu Marriage Act, and you can also claim it under the Hindu Adoption and the Hama Maintenance Act, right? Okay, what is the full form, Hama? Yeah. So now, there have been cases where aggrieved party has sought for relief under the HMA before the Family Court, Hindu Marriage Act, as well as before the magistrate under the DV Act. So that's a clear case of overlapping of jurisdiction. So your court as in this case the Supreme Court has sort of guided how to go about it manera. Then number 2, payment of interim maintenance. Cases where the respondent fails to make payment to the aggrieved party. Then third one is, how do you determine the quantum of maintenance? And this is something which has always, like as magistrates, I always faced problem. The maintenance amount, quantum of maintenance amount, कसरी fix गर्नु? के चाहिँ हेर्नु पर्ने? Should I just be looking at woman ko status, or should I also be looking at the husband ko status, the respondent status, all that? Then another thing which was really bothering the courts was, and where conflicting decisions had been given by the various high courts, date from which the maintenance is to be awarded. Is it from the date where the application is filed, or is it on the date when the relief is given? Kaile they can say yo maintenance say dinu parne, which is the relevant date vanera. Then the enforcement or execution of orders of maintenance. Now coming to overlapping of jurisdiction. Can you all read this? Can you all see? Okay. Now this is all from this. What did I do? Okay. This is all from the judgment, all right? Rajnesh versus Neha. Now Ismate, what they said was, court acknowledged that the aggrieved party lese DV plus family court harma goera relief mangsa vanera. Okay. Now what is required? Where successive claims for maintenance are made by a party under different statutes, like I said, under DV Act, under Hindu Marriage Act, or under Special Marriage Act, the court would consider an adjustment or set-off of the amount awarded in the previous proceeding. DV ma tapaile interim maintenance paere. Correct? And the family court maintenance dinde sari. So tyo maintenance dinda kheri chai the family court has to bear in mind the interim maintenance amount which has already been granted to the aggrieved party. And then next one is, it is now mandatory. Garnai parne ho. It is now mandatory for the applicant to disclose the previous proceeding and the orders passed therein in the subsequent proceeding. अब तपाईहरु family court मा आउनु भयो रे, तर त्यसो अगाडि तपाईहरु domestic violence court मा magistrate को अगाडि जानु भएको छ रे. All that has to be disclosed in your petition before the family court. Alright? And then if the order passed in the previous proceeding requires any modification or variation, it would be required to be done in the same proceeding. Now you are before the family court, तपाईहरुको order पाए रे, तर त्यो order को दौरान चाहिँ अब त्यो domestic violence court मा चाहिँ DV Act को under मा चाहिँ तपाईले जे पायो relief, interim relief or whatever relief, permanent relief, त्यो relief मा अलिकति changes गर्नु पर्ने हेरे. त्यो changes गर्नु लागि चाहिँ you have to go back to that Domestic Violence Act, मतलब the magistrate, and not expect the family court to intervene and modify. त्यो चाहिँ हुँदैन. For modification in a previously given proceeding, you have to go back to the same court. Please keep this in mind. An aggrieved party, so basically aggrieved party can go for domestic violence, for maintenance before the family court. Okay? It's, you can't say, hey, timle yaha pa kere yaha nira halisakyo त्यहाँ पाउँदैन. No, you can simultaneously गर्नु सक्छ. तर यदि तपाईहरुले DV मा magistrate ले तपाईहरुलाई अलिकति relief दियो भने, you have to make that submission before the family court. Why is this done? So that there's no multiplicity of proceedings. अब conflicting judgments हुनु सक्ला. So that's why it is the duty of the aggrieved party to inform the courts of the proceedings. Alright? Now, this is payment of interim maintenance. This is something I think my learned CGM Pakyong was informing me that now affidavit disclosing tapahharuko
assets and liabilities. तपाईहरुको कति पैसा छ, तपाईहरुले कति कमाउनु हुन्छ, जमिन जायदाद कति छ. That is mandatory as per this judgment. Now I believe that the parties are refusing, do not do it properly, do not disclose it properly. But then as per this judgment, you all are duty bound to give it properly. तपाईहरुको assets के हो, तपाईहरुको liabilities के हो. प्राय मान्छेहरुले चाहिँ they try to underplay, they try to hide it. Now if in the affidavit the court finds that you all are hiding, त्यहाँदेखि के हुन्छ? I'm the court and I come to realize the aggrieved party, she's actually earning say 1 lakh. तर उसले चाहिँ affidavit मा भनिरहेको छ मेरो monthly कमाइ चाहिँ 50,000 मात्रै हो. I come to know, then what happens? Yeah. When you give something in affidavit means whatever you are stating in that paper, that is true, that is taken as the truth. So please be careful. As protection officers, you have to guide the parties are like, and as magistrates, you have to be vigilant. And if they have not given it properly, it is your duty. Give them an opportunity. Inform the parties that they need to disclose the assets and liabilities properly, and then give them an opportunity. If they are hiding, tell them. Counsel register, give them an opportunity. Don't just directly go into the offensive mode. All right. Now, what is the criteria for determining the quantum of maintenance? Now, when it comes to kati maintenance denu parne tyo lady lai, okay? Isma what had happened was the Supreme Court, they realized that all over the country, the maintenance gardakheri chai the respondent, one of their line of defenses, oh, she's educated, yeah. She has a government job, yeah. So I don't think she's entitled to maintenance manera. Okay? Now there are a number of judgments, okay? Courtley is Shamima Faruqi. It has clearly said that the obligation of the husband to provide maintenance stands at a higher pedestal than the wife. Alright? And in this judgment, especially your Sunita Kachwaha and others versus Anil Kachwaha, Isma Bandesa that husband may raise a contention that the wife has sufficient income, so she does not require financial assistance. Supreme Court repelled this contention and held merely because the wife was earning some income, it could not be a ground to reject her claim for maintenance. Now why do we give maintenance to the wife, to the female? The objective basically. Not to ensure that the wife has a luxurious life, no. To ensure that her life is not reduced to destitution or vagrancy. Like, what do you see in the movie, man? Those 90s movies, like the wife is chucked out of the house, then a sad background music comes, and then you look at the wife is like begging on the road, or she's going through a very bad phase, Yes, that's the exact thing you have put in your head, okay? You just have to ensure that she is not reduced to destitution or vagrancy on account of failure of the marriage. There's no like a formula kind of thing, okay, no. You have to draw a careful and just balance between all relevant factors. Now it says that you need to bear in mind the financial status of, for example, the husband, the respondent, and the standard of living that the aggrieved person, the woman, was accustomed to, was used to in her matrimonial home. Biha gardakheri jun chai standard thyo, tyo chai maintain garnu paryo. It doesn't mean like she gets to go on a holiday every year. Basically, वहाँको minimum standard जुन चाहिँ छ त्यो चाहिँ maintain किया जाओस् भनेको. If she's used to going to the using a particular brand of cream, the husband has to ensure that maintenance given so that she is able to buy all those basic necessities a female requires. Alright? Now, from which maintenance is to be awarded. This was also something which keeps haunting us, like the judiciary. So just keep in mind, it is from the date the application was filed. And then lastly, which honestly, I don't find it so effective also with respect to execution of orders of maintenance. It's a verbatim reproduction of whatever's there in the Act. Section 26 of the DV Act, मैले तपाईहरुलाई भने जस्तो पर employed हो भने employerलाई भनेर त्यस्तो गर्न सक्छ भने. Alright? Which honestly, I don't know, I think my learned magistrates will also agree. Execution is something which was challenging. This judgment to an extent has helped, but then when it comes to ensuring timely payment of that maintenance amount, the only thing it has reiterated is Section 26 of the DV Act, which is just a verbatim reproduction of whatever is being done and whatever is being carried out. Anyway, moving on. Okay, this is the last portion of my the topic given. Section 17 and Section 26. What is Section 17? All that Section 26 says is that whatever relief is available under the DV Act, like I mentioned, the residence, the maintenance, the protection, the custody, the interim orders, the compensation, all those are available to the aggrieved person in any legal proceeding before a civil court, family court or a criminal court. Alright? So, no doubt, if you come under the aggrieved person, if you come under this act, you get the reliefs. But if the aggrieved person goes before the family court, त्यसमा पनि यो reliefहरु we can provide भन्दैछ. Alright? And then it says that in case, again it says that 26(3) ले भन्दैछ कि that aggrieved person in any proceedings other than a proceeding under this act shall be bound to inform the magistrate of the grant of such relief. So if the aggrieved person in family court ma ke relief paye and there's a DV matter pending before the magistrates, so that aggrieved person has to inform the magistrate of the relief given. Alright? Now, if you go to the important part in Section 26 is legal proceeding before a civil court, a family court. Okay? Now, Section 28. Now, what does Section 28 say? Section 28 is that whatever proceedings go on under the DV Act for compensation, for residence, for custody, for maintenance, all those are governed by the CRPC, criminal proceeding. Alright? But then, 26 says civil court, family court or criminal court. So now, in this case, Satish Chandra Ahuja versus Sneha Ahuja. Isma, the court was faced with a situation where the magistrate had given interim relief, maintenance scope. Now as per 28, it's the CRPC. And as per 26, civil court, family court. Okay? Now, the issue before the court was your interim relief due by the magistrate. Okay? What happens to that when a matter is before the civil court? So in this court, there was a lot of there were a lot of conflicting decisions with regard to this issue. कतिजनाले भन्दैछ सिभिल क्रिमिनल कोर्टको डिसिसन चाहिँ कसरी सिभिल कोर्टमा त्यो लाग्छ हौ, त्यो त क्रिमिनल हो, हामी त सिभिल हो, or सिभिल कोर्टको चाहिँ कसरी क्रिमिनलमा लाग्छ हौ, किनभने we have the code of civil procedure and we have the code of criminal procedure. So कसरी त्यो हुन्छ? Now in this court it held that there is no embargo, like there is no ban for a court, for a civil court to consider a judgment or a relief given by the criminal court or by the DV. All that you have to do is, now if I'm the aggrieved party, if I've come before the civil court and if I'm saying that malai the magistrate the disakyo ta talabara interim relief, the magistrate already knows yesto bhako thyo, malai यसरी देख्छ, so therefore मेरो case त एकदमै strong छ, I should be given this relief even in this court भन्छ नि. Now to prove that, now to get that relief, you have to prove कि तपाईले यो पायो भनेर, जजमेन्ट यो पायो कि यो अर्डर पायो. कसरी त्यो गर्नुहुन्छ? तपाईले तल जतिवटा प्रुफ निकालेको थियो, जतिवटा डकुमेन्ट्सहरु थियो त्यो सबै तपाईले माथि रिप्रोड्युस गर्नु पर्यो सिभिल कोर्टमा. Because the civil court will not take it at face value कि like whatever stated in your pleading or whatever stated in the judgment is correct भनेर. They will also go through it whether or not तपाईले भनेको साँचो हो कि हैन भनेर. All right. Now the judgment or order of criminal courts granting an interim or final relief under section 19, that is residence, are relevant within the meaning of section 43 of the Evidence Act and can be referred to and looked into by the civil court. A civil court is to determine the issues in civil proceeding on the basis of the evidence which has been led by the parties before the civil court. So basically, the burden is on the person who wants that relief. So if I'm the aggrieved party, I have to take evidence and I have to prove my case, even before the civil court. And before the civil court prove gardakeri, I can rely on the interim relief given by the magistrate court. All right. Now there was a lot of discussion. This is a very important judgment. I'm sure you know all of this. Neha Uja, right? Okay, while giving residence order, the section 19 very clearly says that this order saying that tapai yo ghar bara yo residence bara niskinos bhanera, that cannot be passed against any woman bhanera. The section itself says against a male huncha but not against a female. Please keep that in mind. This is my last thing. Toll-free number for the benefit of Rathasa 181. Anything to add on that? Then I know one-stop center. One-stop center, I'm sure you all know about it. And then I the child line like what is it called? Nomenclature. The child line something else once 1098. So aggrieved person kolagi 181, one-stop center. I see someone who's there who's very active in one-stop center, and then the child line. All right. And this all I had to cover. Thank you so much, and we can have an interactive session now. I'm happy to address.
Still in morning. Good morning, everyone. So we have now protection officers from all 6 districts. Gantok Gantok is not here. Gantok is not here. Namchi, Pakyong, Mangan, Gizing, Soreng. Tape na. Okay, tape is Kichari. You're from social welfare. Okay. Alright. Pointed out, domestic violence, it is also recognized as a human rights issue and is a serious deterrent to development, which has also been acknowledged by the Vienna Accord of 1994 and the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action of 1995. Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, we recommend that state parties should act to protect women against violence of any kind, especially occurring within the family. Right? So the name itself, domestic घरेलु हिंसा, domestic violence घरेलु हिंसा भन्छ. Madam has already elaborated everything. कस्तो खालको violence हुन्छ भनेर. So this is something that happens within the four confines of a house. Right? अनि त्यहाँदेखि त्यो कारणले गर्दा चाहिँ it is very difficult, firstly, for aggrieved persons to reach out to the authorities. किनभने हाम्रो समाजमा प्राय के हुन्छ, वुमेनलाई नै ब्लेम गर्छ नि त. उसकै ब्योरा छैन होला र त उलाई बुढाले पिट्यो, उसकै ब्योरा छैन होला र बुढाले छोडेर गयो भन्छ नि त. है, we have this stigmatization. हाम्रो त्यो सोसाइटीको सोचाइ नै, it's a very patriarchal setup that we have. है, so because of all these reasons, केटीहरु अगाडि आएर भन्नु पनि पुरा डराउँछ उनीहरुलाई डोमेस्टिक भाइलेन्स. फिजिकल भाइलेन्स त एटलिस्ट हामीले we can see, है, उसको अनुहारमा दाग हुन्छ, कुटेको केही न केही मार्क्सहरु हुन्छ. है, तर अगेन अघि जुन म्याडमले भन्नुहुँदै थियो तपाईहरुको यो इमोशनल एन्ड verbal violence, and in my experience, like working especially in the district, I feel that this verbal and emotional violence is actually even more prevalent than physical violence in our society. किनभने हाम्रो सोसाइटीमा केटीहरु अलिकति अगाडि त बढेको छ, तर त्यसले त्यो कारणले गर्दा उनीहरुलाई फिजिकल भाइलेन्स बेसी हुँदैन, जस्तै we see it in other parts of our country. है, but like when we go for awareness, है, कतिवटा केसेस आउँदाखेरि पनि we see that emotional and verbal violence is something that is very much prevalent. अब अघि म्याडमले भन्नुभएको छ त्यो आँखा लाउने, है, then अर्को छ अब so many instances केसेसहरु कस्तो हाम्रोमा आउँथ्यो भन्दाखेरि चाहिँ the बुढा चाहिँ लेबरर, है, स्पेशली इन द डिस्ट्रिक्ट्स, उ लेबर काम गर्छ, उले दिनमा जति कमाउँछ गयो रक्सी खायो, है, केटाहरुसँग उसको साथीभाइहरुसँग तास खेल्यो, पैसा सकेर वापस आउँछ. घरमा बुढीको नानीहरुको लागि खाना पकाउने केही हुँदैन, स्टोभमा केरोसिन हाल्ने पनि छैन, हो, चामल छैन, केही छैन. सो त्यो कारणले गर्दा चाहिँ अब बुढीहरु एमजी नरेगा अरु अर्काको घरतिर होटलहरुतिर काम गर्नुको लागि उनीहरुलाई एकदमै जरुरी पर्थ्यो. किन नानीलाई त खुवाउनै पर्यो, जे भए पनि आमाको मदर इन्स्टिङ्क्ट्स हो, नानीलाई त भोकै सुत्नु दिँदैन, हैन. त्यो गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ बुढाले त्यसमा त्यहाँ आँखा लाउने, कहाँ गयो, कसलाई भेट्नु गयो. ही विल नट सी दैट बुढी चाहिँ बाहिर गएर चाहिँ उले त्यो कारणले गर्दा घरको चुलामा चाहिँ खाना पाकिरहेको छ भनेर, है. तर उल्टा चाहिँ राति मातेर आएर पकाएको खाना लात लगाएर फ्याँकिदिने, हो. किन चाहिँ तँ यो लुगा लगाएर बाहिर गयो, कोसँग थिएस, फोनमा के गर्दैछ भने कोसँग फोनमा च्याट गरेको, है. सो दिस काइन्ड अफ इमोसनल भाइलेन्स जुनले चाहिँ बुढीलाई बस्नु एकदमै साह्रो पर्छ त्यो घरमा. दिनरात अब कुटपिटाइ नभए पनि कतिजनाले हामीले सुनेको पनि छ, उसको बुढा त कति राम्रो छ, देउता त चाहिँ कहिले पनि बुढीलाई हात लाउँदैन, तर त्यो मान्छेले चाहिँ हात नलगाएर, हात नलगाएको होस् तर उसले चाहिँ घरमा त्यो न्याङ 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 गरी बस्ने, दिनरात केही न केही कुरामा. राम्रो जति नै मिठो खाना बनाउँदाखेरि पनि खाना मिठै छैन, कुनै कसको फल्लाको बुढीले खाना मिठो बनाउँछ, फल्लाको बुढी जस्तै किन नदेखेको, त्यस्तोहरू त्यो जुनले चाहिँ मान्छेलाई ट्रमा दिन्छ, है, उसलाई त्यो बस्नु नै हुँदैन, डिप्रेसनमा पठाइदिन्छ, उसको मेन्टल हेल्थ इस्युजहरू निकालिदिन्छ. त्यसलाई चाहिँ इट्स भेरी इम्पोर्टेन्ट फर अस टु रेकग्नाइज दिस इमोसनल एन्ड verbal abuse, है, जुन चाहिँ एन्ड दिस इज आई थिङ्क जति पनि हाम्रोमा केसेस आउँछ यो चाहिँ मैले मोर प्रेभलेन्ट देखेँ. डिआइआरमा इभन द अग्रिभ पर्सन डज नट रियलाइज कि यो चाहिँ उसलाई खास एउटा दिस इज अ फर्म अफ घरेलु हिंसा, बट इट्स अ डोमेस्टिक भाइलेन्स. बिकज अघि म्याडमले भन्नुभएको जस्तै हामीले डोमेस्टिक भाइलेन्स भन्दा के बुझ्छ, कुटपिट मात्रै बुझ्छ नि, है. तर दे डोन्ट अन्डरस्ट्यान्ड द्याट यो घरमा च्याङ च्याङ गरेर बस्नै नसक्ने, अशान्ति बनाइदिने, नानीहरू पढ्नु नसक्ने, है, त्यो पनि इट्स अ भाइलेन्स. सो दिस इज भेरी इम्पोर्टेन्ट, स्पेसली हाम्रो प्रोटेक्सन अफिसर्सहरूलाई टु रेकग्नाइज. अग्रिभ पर्सनले तपाईँहरूकोमा दे माइट अप्रोच यु ओन्ली फर फिजिकल अब्युज, मलाई कुटपिट गर्यो भनेर, बट वेन यु स्टार्ट इन्टरेक्टिङ विथ देम, क्वेसनिङ देम, यु विल रियलाइज द्याट अलङ विथ फिजिकल भाइलेन्स उनीहरूको माथि इमोसनल र भर्बल भाइलेन्स पनि भएको हुन्छ, है. सो यो चाहिँ तपाईँले रेकग्नाइज गर्नु अनि अग्रिभ पर्सनलाई भन्नु पनि पर्यो कि यो पनि तिम्रो लागि चाहिँ एउटा दिस इज अ फर्म अफ डोमेस्टिक भाइलेन्स भनेर, है. सो विदिन द फ्यामिली विटनेसेस पनि हुँदैन. घरको मान्छे अब सपोज बुढाको घरमा हुँदैछ भने उसको फ्यामिली मेम्बर्सले देख्ला बुढाले यसरी ल्याङ गरिरहेको कुटपिट गरिरहेको बट डु यु थिङ्क द फ्यामिली मेम्बर्स अफ द हस्बेन्ड विल कम टु कोर्ट एन्ड से द्याट हो मेरो भाउजूलाई मेरो बुहारीलाई यसले कुटपिट गर्दैछ उसलाई घरेलु हिंसा हुँदैछ नो सी वन्ट ह्याभ एनी विटनेस अनि प्राय लभ म्यारेजेस छ भने झन् साह्रो पर्छ बिकज सी विल नट इभन ह्याभ द सपोर्ट अफ द हर ओन पेरेन्ट्स अल्सो आफ्नो फ्यामिली मेम्बर्सले पनि मनपराएकै केटासँग त गएको हो सो के भयो त अब सहेर बस्नु भन्छ सो बिकज अफ अल दिज रिजन्स हाम्रो सोसाइटीमा चाहिँ एउटा लेडीलाई डोमेस्टिक भाइलेन्स मलाई हुँदैछ भन्नु चाहिँ इट्स अ भेरी डिफिकल्ट थिङ है सो द्याट्स वाइ वी निड द सपोर्ट अफ द प्रोटेक्सन अफिसर्स तपाईँहरूले गएर इन्टरभ्युन गर्नु पर्यो है हाम्रो सर्भिस प्रोभाइडर्सहरू पनि छ यहाँ आज त आउनु भएको छैन होला आई थिङ्क वी have, as per the information I received from the department, we have 2 service providers in Sikkim रहेछ हो एउटा Mangan districtमा अनि एउटा Sonam districtमा रहेछ उहाँहरू आउनु त भएन रहेछ आज है सो तपाईँहरूले चाहिँ since service providers also work towards the rights of women, protecting the rights and interest of women तपाईँहरूले चाहिँ हेर्नु पर्यो अब तपाईँहरू as protection officers it's very important for you to get in touch with ASHA workers also किनभने उहाँहरू होम भिजिटहरूमा गाउँ बस्ती पुरा डुल्नुहुन्छ so they will know कुन चाहिँ घरमा चाहिँ कहाँ के हुँदैछ so you can help that aggrieved person come to court and seek for justice है so now starting अघि म्याडमले पनि यो जजमेन्ट भन्नुभएको थियो जुन कुनापा रेड्डी भन्ने यसमा सुप्रिम कोर्टले यो एक्ट चाहिँ हामीले डोमेस्टिक भाइलेन्सको एक्ट किन छ भनेर चाहिँ डिफाइन गर्नुभएको छ है The intention is to protect women against violence of any kind, especially that occurring within the family, as the civil law does not address this phenomenon in its entirety. And we also need to understand that proceedings under the DV Act, right, it is quasi-criminal, quasi-civil in nature. Initially, it takes the form of a civil proceeding, right? Magistrate orders or pass which can be executed under the CPC, or we had a discussion. It takes the form of a civil proceeding. But if there has been a breach or a violation of the orders which has been passed by the magistrate, then what happens? Then it takes the form of a criminal proceeding. Right? It has a penal provision up to 1 year imprisonment along with fine up to 20,000 rupees, all with both. So, your judgment month. It is for this reason that the scheme of the Act provides that in the first instance, the order that would be passed by the magistrate on a complaint filed by the aggrieved person would be of a civil nature, and if the said order is violated, it assumes the character of criminality. So now moving on to the topic assigned to me, domestic incident report. What do you understand by the term domestic incident report? So domestic, we've already elaborated on that. जुन चाहिँ घरभित्र हुन्छ फ्यामिलीभित्र है पर्सनल स्पेसमा सो द्याट इज तपाईँको डोमेस्टिक इन्सिडेन्ट मिन्स एउटा घटना या सिरिज मल्टिपल इभेन्ट्स द्याट हेज टेकन प्लेस एन्ड रिपोर्ट मिन्स इन्फर्मेसन गिभन इन अ स्पेसिफिक म्यानर है सो जुन यो हाम्रो डोमेस्टिक इन्सिडेन्ट रिपोर्टको कन्टेन्ट्स हुन्छ यो चाहिँ तपाईँको डोमेस्टिक भाइलेन्स कुन किसिमको हुँदैछ त्यो चाहिँ इट हेज टु बी फिल्ड अप इन दिस डिआइआर है and it can pertain to one incident or it can also pertain to multiple incidents. जस्तै अब हाम्रो criminal case start गर्नुको लागि complainants go to the police thana to lodge an FIR. That is the foundation. It sets the wheel rolling for a criminal case. Similarly, हाम्रो domestic violence act को cases मा चाहिँ तपाईको यो DIR हो है. And why the DIR is very important is अब हाम्रो जुन orders pass गर्नुहुन्छ to protect the aggrieved person, be it protection, residence, custody, maintenance, compensation, त्यो कोले पास गर्नुहुन्छ हाम्रो learned magistrates ले. But our learned magistrates do not have the opportunity to go and visit the aggrieved person. उसँग सँगै बसेर तिमीलाई खासै के भएको भनेर त्यो बुझ्नु सकिँदैन. उहाँको त अब कोर्टमा के हुन्छ अगाडि जे दिएको छ त्यही विषयमा नै उहाँहरूले दे हेभ टु बिलिभ राइट एभिडेन्स आउनु पर्यो सो त्यसले गर्दा चाहिँ यो डिआइआर इज भेरी इम्पोर्टेन्ट बिकज यसमा चाहिँ प्रोटेक्सन अफिसर तपाईँहरू आफै नै पर्सनली बसेर चाहिँ यु अल आर इन्टरभ्युइङ द अग्रिभ पर्सन सो उहाँहरूको डिरेक्टली के छ फ्याक्ट्स लाइक उहाँले फिजिकल अब्युज अघि मैले भनेको छ फिजिकल अब्युज मात्रै भन्ला बट एज यु आर मेकिङ देम ओपन अप यु रियलाइज द्याट देयर इज सेक्सुअल भाइलेन्स अल्सो बिन कमिटेड अन हर देयर इज इमोसनल भाइलेन्स इकोनोमिक भाइलेन्स मेरोमा एउटा केस आएको थियो where the girl came to me only for physical abuse, है तर while we were reading it उसले कुटपिट गर्यो भनेको थियो. But while we read it, we also learned that उसको चाहिँ नानी डेलिभर भएको 1 हप्ताभित्र, it was a normal delivery, त्यसको बाद चाहिँ हस्बेन्डले उसलाई जबरजस्ती सेक्सुअल इन्टरकोर्समा इन्गेज गर्न लगाएछ. So that means it is a sexual violence also, है तर त्यो आएको थिएन. But तपाईहरुको DIR मा since you all have written that, त्यसले गर्दा the court could make out that okay, there was sexual violence also committed on her भनेर. So that's why the DIR is very very important. हाम्रो protection officers ले तपाईहरुले चाहिँ यो चाहिँ आफै नै aggrieved person त्यो अफिसमा बसेर खै हेरौँ त उसको कम्प्लेन के रहेछ त्यो हेरेर चाहिँ भर्ने खालको चीज हैन यो चाहिँ, है किनभने यसले चाहिँ हामीले aggrieved पर्सनहरुलाई न्याय दिन सक्छ हो यो DIR को बेसिसमा. सो त्यो कारणले गर्दा तपाईहरु चाहिँ उहाँहरुसँग नै बसेर each and every detail के छ त्यो फिल अप गर्नु पर्यो अनि त्यो चाहिँ कोर्टमा आएपछि the learned magistrates will be able to pass effective orders. So DIR has been defined under section 2E of the Act of 2005. It says it is a report made in the prescribed format on receipt of complaint of domestic violence from an aggrieved person. Purpose it allows the court to have a glimpse into the incidents of domestic violence in a precise and unbiased. Now why is there a term unbiased? Now I'll come to that. Usually हाम्रो courtsमा domestic violence case file गर्दाखेरि the aggrieved person takes the assistance of a lawyer, right? Through legal aid हुन्छ कि के हुन्छ उहाँले lawyer गर्छ. With all due respect to the lawyers, यसमा चाहिँ म भन्न चाहन्छु हाम्रो copy paste पुरा हुन्छ है without looking at the circumstances of each case, है copy paste अब family court मा त्यही हुन्छ. And actually this is a very bad practice that हुँदैछ किनभने कतिवटा cases चाहिँ अब हामीले जति सक्दो चाहिँ family court cases हरु, be it domestic violence, be it divorce cases, है family maintenance cases हरु, we try instead of disposing of it off on merits, we try as much as possible to settle it. Settle को मतलब चाहिँ उनीहरुलाई सँगै बस भन्नु खाले चाहिँ हैन तर दुवै पार्टीलाई चाहिँ कसरी हामीले amicably मिलाउन सक्छ भनेर है. तर यसमा चाहिँ के हुँदै रहेछ भने स्पेशली family court and DV cases मैले in my experience I've seen drafting मा बेसी copy paste भएर चाहिँ नभएको allegations पनि लगाइदिन्छ. Because when you are approaching the court you want to make it look as severe as possible, right? So नभएको कुरा पनि लेख्छ. When this copy goes to the respondent, बुढा या बुढाको family या other अब family members हरु, they get very agitated. यो त नभएको कुरा पनि लेखेछ हैन. अब उनीहरुले अलिकति मिल्ने चान्स थियो भने पनि झन् रिसाएर म झन् ठुलो लयर लग्छु म त यो केस अब फाइट गर्छु भन्छ है. सो त्यो कारणले गर्दा चाहिँ that's why the DIR will help us. तपाईहरुले unbiased भइकिन तपाईहरुले उहाँले मात्रै के भनेको छ त्यो लेखेर हामीलाई दियो भने चाहिँ we will understand that okay so many things were actually त्यसै हालेको रहेछ एप्लिकेसनमा भनेर. Because that is what's happening at the ground level, है. सो यसमा चाहिँ तपाईहरुले त्यसै अफिसमा बसेर टिकमक गर्नु खालके चाहिँ हैन उहाँसँग बसेर नै बुझेर के छ त्यो मात्रै लेखिदिनु पर्यो हुन्छ. त्यहाँदेखि फर्मेट जुन छ त्यो चाहिँ तपाईहरुको रुल्स 2006 मा छ है which I'll come more in detail. First let's go to who fills up the DIR. Protection officer and the service provider, right? So तपाईको यो rule 5 मा भन्दैछ कि protection officer ले बनाउँछ and service provider ले पनि बनाउँछ. Now service protection officer ले कहिले बनाउँछ? The practice here is after a complaint of domestic violence under section 12 is filed before the learned court, है court ले protection officer लाई direction दिइहाल्छ कि please file a DIR within a certain period of time भनेर, so that while examining the aggrieved person before passing any interim relief and all DIR हेरेर चाहिँ के रहेछ ग्राउन्ड लेभलमा बुझौँ त भनेर हो. यो बाइक पनि सर्भिस प्रोभाइडर्सलाई पनि यो एक्टले पावर दिएको छ. कहिले चाहिँ गर्नु सक्छ भन्दाखेरि यो चाहिँ बिफोर द कम्प्लेन्ट कम्स है aggrieved personले, because then service providers are registered entities who work towards protecting the rights and interests of women. उनीहरु गाउँ बस्तीमा पुरा डुलेकोले गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ उनीहरुलाई थाहा हुन्छ है. सो इफ एन aggrieved person just approaches उनीहरुलाई थाहा हुँदैन धेरै जना aggrieved personलाई मलाई डोमेस्टिक भाइलेन्स हुँदैछ म चाहिँ कोर्टमा गएर सेक्सन 12 मा एप्लिकेसन गर्नुपर्छ या त प्रोटेक्सन अफिसर छ भनेर उहाँलाई थाहा हुँदैन है. सो through service providers उनीहरूले approach गरेर एउटा DIR बनाइदिनुहोस् या when they just approach service providers को चाहिँ it is their duty that they make a DIR, immediately forward a copy to the magistrate and also a copy to the protection officer also किनभने protection officer त्यो एरियाको लागि थाहा हुनु पर्यो कि पल्ला पल्ला चाहिँ aggrieved person रहेछ उसलाई चाहिँ complain हुँदैछ उसले चाहिँ complain गर्दैछ भनेर हो. So they are the two authorities who have been vested with the power to fill up the DIR. Now protection officer, right? Under section 8 of the DV Act, protection officer is somebody who is appointed by the state government by notification. Then section 9(1)(b) of the Act it is the duty of the protection officer to make a DIR to the magistrate upon receipt of complaint of domestic violence. Oh, that they can say isko chai ule copies say police officer immediate jurisdiction ko kunja thana ko police officer ulan pataunu parcha. Why? Because you say hamro again unaruko safety ko लागि ho aggrieved person haru. And many a times we've also come across that respondents get very agitated when they hear that बुढीले चाहिँ domestic violence को case lodge गरेको छ भनेर है. I was attending this training once in Delhi. त्यति बेला Delhi protection officer धेरै जना आउनु भएको थियो. अब Delhi त हाम्रो जस्तै एउटा peaceful state place त हैन certainly हैन, violence is on a much higher level than what we have here. अन्त बिचारा त्यहाँको protection officer ले भन्दै थियो उनीहरु त्यहाँ DIR को लागि जान्छ या notice serve गर्नको लागि जान्छ, they get beaten up also रहेछ along with the aggrieved persons. Oh, aggrieved person ले किन कपा तिमीले aggrieved person लाई किन help गर्दैछ. So their state out, I mean the state of the protection officers out there is even, I mean it's really bad रहेछ बिचारा उहाँहरुको लागि, and nobody could help and do anything. पुलिस होला भन्यो भने त्यहाँको पुलिसहरु कतिको छ we all know है, outside our hills कस्तो छ भनेर हो. So उहाँहरुको लागि त I found it very difficult for them to be for any person to be a protection officer in places like Delhi and all, right? But luckily out here we don't have. Court ko भनेपछि अलिकति they get scared, court ko orders छ, and here I think the police are more cooperative किनभने courtबाट पनि copy जान्छ. So तपाईहरुले when you all are issuing notice or your DIR fill up गर्न जानुहुँदैछ त्यति बेला you all can seek the assistance of the local police also. त्यहाँदेखि त्यसको बाद हाम्रो service provider. Now as I've already talked about it, service provider is under section 10, right? So it is an entity which has to be registered with the state government, right? That unarko चाहिँ main object is to protect the rights and interests of women. Unarko services, the service provider ले के services दिनु सक्छ भन्दाखेरि they can give medical services, they can give legal services, financial services, right? Or financial aid हरू. So त्यो फिल्डमा जो काम गर्नुहुन्छ उहाँहरु चाहिँ they can register themselves with the state government and become registered service providers. हो that they can उहाँहरुलाई पनि like I've already stated they've been vested with the power to record the DIR. उहाँहरुलाई once they've been approached by the aggrieved person and forward a copy again to the magistrate and the protection officer. Now coming to form 1 of the So यसमा चाहिँ तपाईहरुको rules मा हेर्नु भयो भने rules को last मा we have form 1 है. यसमा तपाईहरुले हेर्नु भयो भने domestic incident report we have an entire format only. Oh, so यसमा what is necessary is first you need to fill up the details of the aggrieved person है, उसको age, address, पहिला कहाँ बस्दै थियो in case if she's already shifted from her from the shared household who अहिले कहाँ बस्दैछ, these details are essential. Then the other details is उहाँहरुको respondents को, who are the persons who are committing domestic violence on her. So ESMA one very important field is relationship with the aggrieved person. त्यो चाहिँ तपाईले लेख्नु पर्यो के relationship छ. Like domestic aggrieved person is making a allegation that फल्ला फल्लाले चाहिँ मलाई कुटपिट गर्दैछ, मलाई violence, economic violence or whatever, any form of violence गर्दैछ भनेर. So तर उसको relation चाहिँ aggrieved person सँग के छ त्यो चाहिँ तपाईहरुले एकदमै clarify गरेर राखिदिनु पर्यो. Mother in law, father in law, brother in law, sister in law, their sister, father, mother जो पनि हुन्छ है, that has to be specified. त्यहाँदेखि उसको aggrieved person को नानीहरु छ भने त्यो details पनि दिनु पर्यो. Because this is again important when we are passing maintenance order, है, custody orders को लागि, so it is very important. Then we come to the main part, which is the incident of domestic violence. So the first field जुन छ त्यो चाहिँ तपाईको physical violence छ. So physical violence मा you'll have to specify what kind of violence has been committed on her. Could be some biting हुन्छ, kicking हुन्छ है. So hair pulling, जे पनि तपाईलाई भन्दैछ त्यो तपाईले specify गरेर भन्नु पर्यो. Then another is sexual violence. So first is तपाईको forced sexual intercourse है. या उहाँलाई जबरजस्ती pornography हेर्नु लाउँदैछ भने या any obscene materials हेर्नु लाउँदैछ भने that has to be specified. त्यहाँदेखि उसलाई if she's being used to forcibly entertain others है अरूलाई कतिजनाको त्यस्तो केसेस पनि हुन्छ है that बुढीलाई चाहिँ साथीहरू भाइहरू घरमा ल्याएर चाहिँ बुढीलाई entertain गर्नु लाउनु. So that is also comes under the purview of तपाईको sexual violence. So त्यो पनि specify गर्नु पर्यो. Then in case if there's anything apart from these जुन चाहिँ aggrieved person लाई humiliating छ, degrading छ, त्यो पनि तपाईले specify गर्नु पर्यो है. जस्तो अघि मैले भनेको जस्तै the making the wife engage in sexual intercourse 1 week after she delivered a baby हैन त्यस्तो तपाईले specify गरिदिनु भयो भने it will be much easier for us. Then verbal and emotional abuse है accusation, aspersion उसको character conduct मा आँखा लाउनु त्यही हो है. त्यहाँदेखि अब हाम्रो स्टेटमा त यो त बेसी छैन तर अरू स्टेट्समा धेरै हुन्छ insult for not bringing dowry, sufficient dowry है. Outside Sikkim हामीले हेर्यो भने dowry system is still very prevalent despite the prohibition. तर त्यसमा अहिले पनि प्र्याक्टिस हुनु भएकोले गर्दा उले dowry राम्रो ल्याएन, कम्ती पैसा ल्यायो, उसको ज्वेलरीज कम्ती थियो, घर दिएन, कुनै के दिएन भनेर त्यस्तो डोमेस्टिक भाइलेन्स छ भने त्यो मेन्सन गर्नु पर्यो. कतिजनाको नानी छोरा नानी या नानी नै नभएको छ भने त्यसमा पनि हुन्छ डोमेस्टिक भाइलेन्स. So that also has to be mentioned है. Undermining, humiliating, demeaning remarks उसलाई गर्दैछ जुनले चाहिँ उसलाई आफैलाई नराम्रो लाग्छ है उसलाई ह्युमिलिएट हुँदैछ त्यस्तोहरू तपाईले मेन्सन गर्नु पर्यो. नेम कलिङ उसलाई रिडिक्युल गर्दैछ भने उसलाई उसको बारेमा जिस्कायो, नराम्रो भन्यो, खिल्ली उडायो भन्छ जुन हामीले लोकल टर्म हैन त्यस्तोहरू जुनले चाहिँ इट मेक्स अ फिल भेरी अनकम्फर्टेबल. घरमा पाहुना आइरहेको छ बुढीको चाहिँ नराम्रो कुरा गरेर जिस्कियो त्यस्तो गर्यो भने that also amounts to violence है. So these have to be specified. त्यहाँदेखि यदि ऊ स्कुल जाँदैछ पढ्दैछ एजुकेसन पर्स्यु गर्दैछ तर उसलाई पढ्नु दिएको छैन त्यो पनि इट्स अ फर्म अफ इमोसनल भाइलेन्स है. सो द्याट अल्सो इट हेज टु बी स्पेसिफाइड. कतिजना केटीहरूलाई बिहा गरेर काम गर्नु दिँदैन द्याट इज अल्सो अ फर्म अफ भाइलेन्स. सो द्याट अल्सो हेज टु बी स्पेसिफाइड. कतिजनालाई घरबाट बुढा बिना या घरको दाजुभाइ बिना घरबाट निक्लिनै दिँदैन एक्लै राइट. सो द्याट इज अल्सो अ फर्म अफ भाइलेन्स विच हेज टु बी स्पेसिफाइड. त्यहाँदेखि एउटा को पर्टिकुलर मान्छेलाई नबेच्नु या उसलाई बिहा गर्नै मन छैन तर जबरजस्ती उसलाई उसको फ्यामिलीले बिहा गर्नु भन्दैछ या अगेन्स्ट उसले नमन पराएको मान्छेले बिहा गर्नु भन्दैछ उसले बिहा गर्छु भने मान्छेसँग बिहा गर्नु दिएको छैन. दिज अल कम अन्डर इमोसनल एन्ड भर्बल भाइलेन्स. राइट. त्यहाँदेखि यो बाहेक अरू कुनै किसिमको छ भने तपाईँले स्पेसिफाई गर्न सक्नुहुन्छ. देन कमिङ टु द नेक्स्ट form of violence, that is economic violence. So madam has elaborated on that, not giving you money, not paying your rent, electricity bill, nani ko school fees tireko chaina time ma, which is creating a lot of humiliation for the wife and the children, right? That all amounts to economic violence. Ulai kam linu nadeko, ule suppose काम गर्दैछ भने उसको salary उले थाप्नु भन्दा अगाडि घोसाइदिनु है. अनि त्यहाँदेखि उसको त्यो ज्वेलरीहरू सबै बिहाको टाइममा सपोज फ्यामिलीले दिएको छ त्यो जबरजस्ती बेचिदियो हो या त उसलाई नभनिकन त्यो उनीहरूले पर्न गर्यो बन्धक राख्नु भन्छ त्यस्तोहरू गर्यो भने दिज अल अमाउन्ट्स टु इकोनोमिक भाइलेन्स. राइट. त्यहाँदेखि अर्को चाहिँ डाउरी रिलेटेड हरासमेन्ट पनि छ इन योर डिआइआर हो. सो यसमा चाहिँ अगेन एनी डिमान्ड्स मेड विथ रिगार्ड टु डाउरी इन्सफिसियन्ट डाउरी ल्यायो भनेर हो. सो कुनै हरासमेन्ट डाउरीको सम्बन्धित छ भने चाहिँ त्यो पनि तपाईहरुले मेन्सन गर्नु पर्यो. सो दिस फर्स्ट पार्ट हेज टु बी साइन बाइ द अग्रिभ पर्सन. तपाईले फिल अप गरेर उहाँलाई साइन गर्न लाउनु पर्यो है. त्यसको बाद इफ द अग्रिभ पर्सन डिजायर्स टु फाइल एनी डकुमेन्ट्स उसको सपोज मेडिकल रिपोर्ट कुटपिट गरेर उसलाई मेडिकल रिपोर्ट छ कि उसलाई कुटपिट चोट लागेको छ भनेर है या त उसको जुन त्यो श्रीधन भन्छ हैन म्यारेजको टाइममा दिने ज्वेलरीहरू त्यो उसको लगिदिएको छ उसको त्यो लिस्ट छ भने त्यो लिस्ट उसले फाइल गर्न सक्छ. सो एनी अदर डकुमेन्ट द्याट शी डिजायर्स टु फाइल लेट्स से उसको काम स्यालेरी उसलाई नदिएर डिरेक्टली घरमा लाँदैछ भने त्यस्तोहरू you all can enclose these documents also. It will give more weight to your DIR. Then the next point that needs to be contained in the DIR is aggrieved person what kind of order does she want from the court? Is it protection order? Is it residence? Or घरबाट निकाल्दैछ उसको बस्ने ठाउँै छैन भने residence. Custody नानी लगिदिरहेको छ है. So any kind of order that the aggrieved person wants, तपाईले कुन चाहिँ उलाई पाएर चाहिँ उलाई अलिकति भए पनि न्याय पाउँछ त्यो तपाईले specify गर्नु पर्यो. And it doesn't have to be only one, you can take more than one also है. त्यहाँदेखि त्यो बाहेक any other assistance. अब कति जनालाई कुटपिट गरेर या sexual violence ले गर्दा they'll be traumatized, so they might need a counseling है, उहाँलाई psychological help चाहिन्छ because they might not be able to get over trauma बाट. Also psychological help, medical assistance. Suppose अब उसको sexual violence ले गर्दा उसको private areas हरू harm भएको छ भने हैन, damage भएको छ भने she might need some kind of surgery for reconstruction and all. So if there is any medical assistance या उसको टाउकोमा हिर्कायो concussion भएको छ उसको maybe scan गर्नुपर्छ, MRI गर्नुपर्छ, CT scan हरू त्यस्तो पनि तपाईले लेख्न सक्नुहुन्छ हो. त्यहाँदेखि अब suppose there is any kind of assistance that she requires for initiating criminal also. जस्तै अब उले त्यो घरमा बेसी हिंसा भएर she has moved out of the house and she is staying separately भनौं. तर त्यो घरमा पनि रात दिन बुढा चाहिँ आएर न्यू खोजेर सोसाइटीको नेबरहुडको अगाडि लाज शरम बनाइदिएर राति मुख छाडेर त्यस्तोहरू गर्दैछ या जबरजस्ती घरमा आएर उलाई तानेर लानु खोज्दैछ भने this amounts to criminal offenses like trespass हैन, assault हरू हुन्छ हो. सो त्यसले गर्दा सपोज यो बाइक उले एउटा क्रिमिनल केस पनि गर्छु भने पनि यो गर्नु सक्छ है. सो यसमा पनि तपाईले लेख्नु पर्यो. त्यहाँदेखि उलाई शेल्टर होममा बस्छु म, यो घरमा म पटक्कै बस्न सक्दिनँ जबसम्म मलाई अर्को घर मिलाउँदैन, म एउटा शेल्टर होममा बस्छु भने पनि त्यो पनि तपाईले माग्नु सक्नुहुन्छ हो. त्यहाँदेखि लास्ट वान इज लिगल एड है. त्यहाँदेखि तपाईहरुले पुलिसलाई चाहिँ यो दिनै पर्यो किनभने पुलिस अफिसरको पनि इट्स अ ड्युटी दैट यो DIR हेरेर चाहिँ ओके criminal action पनि हुनुपर्ने रहेछ, केस हुनुपर्छ भने पनि police can also register a case simultaneously along with the DV proceedings है. यो सबै डेटा दिएर चाहिँ तपाईहरुले protection officers or the service provider will have to countersign it and then submit it to the magistrate and forward copies to the police officer concerned and to the service providers है. So this is what is the तपाईको DIR भित्र के हुन्छ त्यो चाहिँ यो सबै हो. Now we go to the legal implications of DIR. I've already, I think, talked about it. Your report say it is very important because it helps the aggrieved person get effective orders from the courts. Will I protect garnuko lagi paisa ko huncha ki hai? So this is very important. So incident reporting is capturing and documenting information about a specific or multiple events or incidents. Right? The DIR will have data as to who was involved, के भएको थियो, कहिले भएको थियो, कहाँ भएको थियो, के कारणले चाहिँ भएको थियो, त्यो सबै चाहिँ तपाईको DIR ले बताउँछ. So that's why your DIR चाहिँ the protection officers and the service providers will have to take it as a very serious job. It's not a routine job. म तपाईलाई बारम्बार भन्छु यो चाहिँ तपाईहरुले डोमेस्टिक अग्रिभ पर्सन सँगै बसेर तपाईको अफिसमा बोलाएर हुन्छ कि तपाई उसकै घरमा गएर हुन्छ कि कसरी हुन्छ उसको सुविधा अनुसार है उलाई काम बनाएर because sometimes we have to understand that the aggrieved persons are under a lot of trauma है. बिहा अब मान्छे त पुरै खान्छु भनेर त बिहा गरेर कहिले पनि जान्दैन नि त हैन, राम्रै हुन्छ. But sometimes especially arranged marriages ma little do they know त्यो मान्छेको चाहिँ खास ट्रू कलर्स कस्तो रहेछ, उ बक्सी खायो भने कस्तो हुँदै रहेछ भनेर थाहा हुँदैन है. सो मच कम्प्याटिबिलिटी पनि कतिवटा अब इट विल बी अन्डर डाउट राइट, थाहै हुँदैन अब उसको मुड स्विङ्स उसलाई केसमा रिस उठ्छ. अब लभ म्यारेज हो भने एटलिस्ट चिनाजाना पहिलादेखि नै भएको हुन्छ. अरेन्ज म्यारेजेस विच इज अगेन अब सिक्किममा त बेसी छैन तर भए पनि यु विल कम अक्रस सच केसेस अल्सो राइट. सो उसको टेम्परामेन्ट, त्यो मान्छेको टेम्परामेन्ट, फ्यामिली मेम्बर्सको घरमा त्यो उनीहरूको कस्तो छ, अब द फ्यामिली रिलेसन्स बाउ र छोरा मिल्दै मिल्दैन, झगडा मात्रै पर्छ. सो त्यसमा चाहिँ लास्टमा बुहारीलाई भित्र हालेर झन् उसलाई अप्ठ्यारो बनाउँछ कि है. सो त्यसले गर्दा वेन यु आर नट एन्टिसिपेटिङ एनी अफ दिस, बिहा गरेर यु गो गेट म्यारिड थिङ्किङ योर लाइफ इज गोना बी यु स्टार्टिङ अ न्यू च्याप्टर अफ यर लाइफ, तर त्यहाँ जाँदाखेरि चाहिँ उसलाई various forms of domestic violence they'll be under a lot of trauma. So open up because they will have trust issues. So it is very important for you all to make them trust you first of all. They can open up and tell everything in detail. अब court में होता तो वहाँ court like the trust कर देना court को क्षमा तो कति बोल देना है. So similarly तपाईहरुसँग पनि अब stranger लाई त कहाँ सबै मनको कुरा भन्नु सक्छ है. So त्यसले गर्दा चाहिँ it is very important for the protection officers to have a rapport building है. उहाँहरुको के रहेछ if they need counseling counselor को लगिदिनुस् उनीहरु एकैछिन open up गरेन भने त्यही दिन DIR fill up गरेर बुझाइहाल्नु पर्छ भन्छ. You give them time to open up. Once they are comfortable है उनीहरु अलिकति ease मा भएपछि त्यो trauma बाट अलिकति निक्लिसकेपछि then they'll be able to talk about it. So त्यति बेला चाहिँ तपाईले DIR record गरेर राम्रो प्रकारले चाहिँ fill up गरेर चाहिँ courtलाई बुझाइदिनुस्. Only then the court will be able to assist and help the aggrieved person in getting the reliefs. Alright? Then this DIR is also a very important, crucial piece of evidence in court. So now, since we're finished with the DIR, I just want to pose this to our learned magistrates who are present here. Let's read the proviso to section 12.1, which is application to the magistrates, right? So, isma proviso de bandesa, provided that before passing any order on such application, the magistrate shall take into consideration any domestic incident report received by him from the protection officer or the service provider. Now, can I have your thoughts on this, the learned magistrates, even our protection officers with legal backgrounds, eh? Can you share your thoughts, Isma? What do you think? What do you understand by this proviso? How many of you have used this proviso? Mr. Seshi?
So far I have not considered or received this DIR.
You have not received.
Without considering it, and after examining the person, I have passed.
You passed orders, okay.
Similar, when I ask, it is mostly what I have encountered, ma'am, is it's like giving the legal age counsel legal advice, which I cannot do, ma'am. So even when I ask them to file the domestic incident report, they say there is no protection officer there, and also even if the protection officer does file it, it is very
routine.
Yes, ma'am.
I think that's what we face.
So that's why it's very important that now we have a lot of protection officers with legal background. And you're training up and now you will be able to go back, and I hope now you will assist the court more. Yes, Ms. Rana?
Recently, there was a case before me. The aggrieved person was from Siliguri, and even the respondent was from Siliguri. So the very case came before me, the aggrieved person as well as the mother, parents and even the sisters-in-law, they all appeared before me. So then the question of jurisdiction came. The respondent basically challenged the petition on the grounds of jurisdiction. So at that time, the only thing that was left to me was to go into the DIR. And the respondent basically said that she actually doesn't belong to Gangtok, but her brother is here. That also, her brother also doesn't have any kind of a permanent business or anything. He had at one point of time come to work here, and they had not provided proper documents like Aadhaar and all that. Everything showed that they were from Siliguri. But then somehow I think she had managed to use her contacts to get the protection officer from here to prepare the DIR so that they could file the petition here so that the parents can come, so it was basically kind of a misuse of justice.
Misuse of thing, because it is like harassment also, harassing the in-laws to come to Gangtok every time for the case and all.
So in this case, I basically ruled out basically said that there was a lack of jurisdiction, and my entire thing was based on the DIR.
Okay.
So I think it's a very important
tool, yes. So Ismat say, this is a proviso, the magistrate shall take into, so it's a mandatory, right? Shall take into consideration any DIR, which means a magistrate will not err if he or she passes any order without perusing the DIR if the DIR has not been filed. Alright? So this has been elaborated by the Honorable Supreme Court in Prabhatyagi versus Kamlesh Devi. So यो केसमा चाहिँ के भएको थियो भन्दाखेरि म तपाईलाई एउटा briefly भन्छु है. The aggrieved person and the not respondent, her husband got married. Within 1 month, the husband died in a car accident. Alright? But within that 1 month, she had already conceived. त्यहाँदेखि उनीहरू बिहा गरिसकेर चाहिँ they stayed with their in-laws for a bit, then they moved to another village. Then त्यहाँ चाहिँ husband met with a tragic accident and unfortunately he died. Alright? त्यहाँदेखि उसको death rites perform गर्नुको लागि she moved back to her marital house, okay, her in-laws house. Then त्यहाँ चाहिँ once they came to know she was pregnant, they started doubting. यो हाम्रो छोराको होइन होला, बिहा गरेको 1 महिना नै भएको छैन. Because of you, my son died. All that allegation started were made on the aggrieved person. So उसले उसको husband को death rights of the she had to move back to her parents' house, alright? Because there was no way that she could live there. Pra ulai atrocity हुनु by her in-laws. So eventually she filed a case before the learned magistrate for a case of domestic violence before the learned magistrate. Then isma चाहिँ the learned magistrate looked at all the records and passed various reliefs, including residence, blah blah blah, protection order, pass. This order was challenged before the additional session judge by the mother-in-law. The shared household immediately they shifted to another village, so हाम्रो shared household. So the learned session judge looked at all the thing and set aside the order passed by the learned magistrate stating that, alright sir, after marriage they did not stay together. They moved, in-laws of Ubasne Boshena, they got that say, this is shared household. This case cannot sustain Manera. The order passed by the learned magistrate was set aside. The aggrieved person then challenged this before the Honorable High Court. Alright? Then the Honorable High Court also looked at the records and held that sustained the order passed by the additional session judge saying that yes, they did not have a shared household. Another thing that was observed was the DIR was not filed. That's why the magistrate was not competent to pass any of the relief manera. Okay? Then this order was again challenged before the Honorable Supreme Court by the aggrieved person. So Ismat say the Honorable Supreme Court held no. Although the word shall has been used, the magistrate has to take into consideration the DIR only if it has been filed. If it has not been filed, that means that does not create any kind of embargo for the magistrate to pass any orders. Okay? So, now although the expression shall is used in the proviso, it is restricted to only those cases where a protection officer files any DIR or as the case be the service provider. When the DIR is filed by a protection officer or a service provider, in such a case the magistrate has to take into consideration the said report received by him. But if a report has not been filed on behalf of the aggrieved person, then the magistrate is not bound to consider any such report. Alright? So, for the learned magistrate, if DIR is not filed, doesn't mean that you all cannot pass orders. You all can pass orders. Right?
So, if a DIR is filed, but it's cryptic, you can't really understand. Do we reflect it in our order, or do we how do we go about it?
I think we can reflect it in our order and we can ask the protection officer to refile it again.
Like
For the
magistrates, you all need to, when you pass the order from this judgment, the two ways that you need to mention the DIR is there. If it is cryptic, you need to mention that DIR was considered
And if you think the DIR is like very cryptic, it's not disclosing the offence very in detail, elaborately, then you can request the protection officers to refile it. Give them a certain, because sometimes the time might also be a constraint, like the aggrieved person might not open up as easily during the first interview, right? So the court so you all can seek time from the court also, saying that the aggrieved person requires more time to open up, so kindly give us, extend the time period. You all can request. It's not like court you all can appear before the court and seek for time also. Alright, because these are the grounds where time can be granted. So to conclude the DIR, it is an important tool in domestic violence cases that provides essential information to the court. However, its absence does not impede the initiation of proceedings under the DV Act. So it has been established that while DIR must be considered when available, it is not a mandatory requirement for the magistrate to act on applications filed by the aggrieved person. So this interpretation supports the accessibility and effectiveness of legal remedies for victims of domestic violence. Alright? So anything on DIR that anybody would like to, then otherwise we can move to the next topic. Any questions? No? Now can we expect the protection officers to give a more detailed? I hope all of you are sensitized. Opposite apparently, I can open up because now in all the districts we have psychologists, we have psychiatrists, we have counselors that we have almost in every PHC, right? So वहाँ अलिकति counseling चाहिन्छ भने वहाँ counselors को assistance लिएर तपाईको one-stop center मा you can ask the counselor to come counseling लिएर मात्रै उलाई अलिकति when she is more at ease have the DIR recorded so that it will be more effective for the courts. Alright? So then moving to the next topic, right? Role and responsibilities of a protection officer. So role of a protection officer, main is the role is to assist the magistrate. Like I stated already, magistrates do not have the opportunity to visit the house of the aggrieved person to see उसलाई कस्तो घरमा राखेको रहेछ, उसलाई कस्तो खालको घरेलु हिंसा हुँदैछ भनेर. So त्यो चाहिँ that gap is तपाईहरु चाहिँ you all are the bridge. Alright? So त्यसले गर्दा the intermediary भनौं न हैन between the aggrieved person and the court. So तपाईहरुले चाहिँ magistrate लाई assist गर्नुपर्छ. That is your primary duty. Alright? Now Section 9 of the Act talks about the duties, role and responsibilities of the protection officer. We also have the same thing that has been stipulated in Rules 8 and 10 of the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence. Rules 8 and 10. So Section 9 ma tapeko 9 wata duties दिएको छ, whereas tapeko Rules 8 and 10 ma चाहिँ tapeko 14 and 6 respectively functions have been enumerated. Alright? So first and foremost, I'll go stepwise only. तपाईहरुको काम assisting the magistrate, which I've already emphasized. That again, तपाईहरुले aggrieved person लाई information दिनु पर्यो that she has right to free legal aid. Right? She has a right to make a complaint. She can get this kind of relief from the court. Assistance bonus officer, medical fees, medical checkup bonus officer. So all usko rights के चाहिँ तपाईहरुले inform गर्नु पर्यो. है? यो चाहिँ तपाईहरुको form 4 मा छ. यसमा specifically भन्छ कि तपाईहरुले चाहिँ what have you informed the aggrieved person? What like details and information have you provided the aggrieved person with? भनेर यो तपाईहरुले fill up गर्नु पर्यो. है? Then अर्को duty छ तपाईहरुले you all will have to assist the aggrieved person in making an application because victims will not know. उनीहरु चाहिँ कोर्टमा गयो भने under the DV Act they have a relief भनेर. है? So the moment it comes to your notice that फल्नालाई चाहिँ domestic violence हुँदैछ, तपाईहरुको duty, you should not wait for the orders of the court. You should not wait for the orders of any other authority or your superior officers also. The moment it comes to your notice that domestic violence भएको छ, immediately you have to approach the aggrieved person. DIR बनाएर magistrate लाई बुझाइदिहाल्नु पर्यो या उलाई complain गर्नु छ कि के गर्नु छ legal aid को through हैन legal aid को अहिले we have legal aid assistance in almost in all the BDOs SDM with the legal aid clinics so it's a court bike है so त्यहाँ गएर तपाईहरुले legal assistance को लागि we also have a NALSA free helpline number toll free number हो so त्यो नम्बरमा तपाईहरुले legal assistance को लागि माग्न सक्नुहुन्छ. त्यहाँदेखि एउटा तपाईहरुले सेफ्टी प्लान पनि उसको लागि बनाउनु पर्यो त्यो चाहिँ जब एप्लिकेसन फाइल गरिसक्यो सो नाउ व्हाट इज अ सेफ्टी प्लान है यो चाहिँ तपाईहरुको जुन रुल्स को पछाडी फर्म 5 भन्ने छ त्यो हेरेर तपाईहरुले एउटा सेफ्टी प्लान दिनु पर्यो सो सेफ्टी प्लान बनाउँदाखेरि अगेन नाउ व्हाट इज इम्पोर्टेन्ट फर्स्ट यू नीड टु नो द काइन्ड अफ भायोलेन्स दैट हैज बीन कमिटेड अन हर के किसिमको घरेलु हिंसा भएको छ त्यो अनुसार व्हाट आर द रिलिफ whether it is a continuing process है उलाई बारम्बार यही खालके घरेलु हिंसा हुँदैछ भनेर त्यहाँदेखि यसको रिलिफ मेजर्स चाहिँ के छ हो तपाईहरुले हाउ क्यान यू थिंक दैट the aggrieved person can be protected so those reliefs you will have to measures for safety तपाईहरुले स्पेसिफाई गरेर चाहिँ तपाईले कोर्टको इन्टरभेन्सन चाहिँ कसरी चाहिएको छ त्यो लेख्नु पर्यो है यसमा सबै दिएको छ तपाईले यो सेफ्टी प्लान हेर्नु भयो भने you will have an idea physical violence by respondent sexual act attempts at strangulation beating to the children हो then यसमा यो कारणले गर्दा consequences के छ कि कति जनालाई डिप्रेसन हुँदैछ मेन्टल हेल्थ इश्यूज हुँदैछ त्यो लेख्नु पर्यो so now what are the relief she needs counseling at least once every week or therapy चाहियो है so त्यो सबै तपाईले लेख्नु भयो भने court will accordingly pass the orders all right so you all can have a look at the safety plan detail ma tapaile herera chai tapaile yo chai court lai bujhaidinu पर्यो because only then the court will be able to pass effective orders then legal aid ko bare ma maile bhanihale tapaharulai through Sikkim state legal aid services you all will have to ensure that the aggrieved person is given legal aid then assess the aggrieved person or any child in obtaining medical aid at a medical facility or अनि उनीहरुलाई अब हस्पिटल जानु सारो छ जस्तै अब वेस्ट को टाशीडिङमा भइरहेको छ हस्पिटल छ तपाईको गेजिङमा है सो ट्रान्सपोर्टेसन को अब इश्यू भयो नि त स्पेशली इफ इट्स मनसुन टाइम पहिरो आइरहेको छ नाउ व्हाट टु डु राइट और इन केसेस अफ नर्थ चुङथाङमा भइरहेको छ बाटो डल्लै बिग्रिरहेको छ हस्पिटल मङ्गनमा मात्रै छ सो उलाई इमिडिएट मेडिकल एड चाहिरहेको छ सो यसमा यु क्यान अप्रोच द म्याजिस्ट्रेट इमिडिएटली अलराइट त्यहाँदेखि तपाईहरुको डिपार्टमेन्टबाट पनि you all can seek assistance one stop center has certain funds हैन सो त्यो फन्ड्सहरु तपाईहरुले युज गरेर उसको ट्रान्सपोर्टेसनहरुको लागि या उलाई शेल्टर होम पुर्याउनु छ भने है इमिडिएटली उलाई शेल्टर होममा पठाइदिइ हाल्नुस् हो त्यहाँदेखि सर्भिस प्रोवाइडर्सहरुलाई पनि तपाईहरुले इन्फर्म गर्नु पर्यो है दैट उनीहरुको सर्भिसेस के रिक्वायर भएको छ के चाहिन्छ अन्डर दिस एक्ट भनेर हो त्यहाँदेखि काउन्सिलर्सहरु जो अपॉइन्ट हुन्छ उनीहरुको पनि तपाईहरुले लिस्ट चाहिँ म्याजिस्ट्रेटलाई दिनु पर्यो बिकज द म्याजिस्ट्रेट विल नट ह्याभ द लिस्ट अफ काउन्सिलर्स मेन्टेन बाइ द डिपार्टमेन्ट सो दैट दे क्यान डेजिग्नेट कुन चाहिँ काउन्सिलरले चाहिँ ट्रिटमेन्ट दियोस् भनेर अलराइट त्यहाँदेखि अनदर भेरी इम्पोर्टेन्ट जब इज सर्भिस अफ नोटिस अब वन्स अग्रिभ पर्सन अप्रोचेस द कोर्ट विल लुक इन्टु द म्याटर है त्यहाँदेखि त्यसको बाद चाहिँ उसले रेस्पोन्डेन्ट्सलाई कोर्टमा बोलाउनु पर्यो टु स्टेट दैट okay you all have a case of domestic violence case of domestic violence has been filed against you all you all have to appear before the court now this notice has to be served by the protection officer okay so यति बेला नै हो जुन दिल्लीहरुमा भन्थ्यो उनीहरुले बिचारा कुटाइ पनि खायोहरु भनेर है so यसमा चाहिँ it is a very difficult job but तपाईहरुको कामै हो because the moment the respondents come to know especially if they are very violent that aggrieved person ले चाहिँ कोर्टमा केस फाइल गर्यो अब it is हाम्रो स्पेशली सोसाइटीमा त कोर्ट जानु भनेपछि इट बिकम्स अ भेरी बिग डिल नि हैन अरे कोर्टमा केस फाइल गरेछ उले भनेर इभन इफ इट्स नट डोमेस्टिक सिभिल केसेसहरु नै हो भने पनि हामीले देखेको छ है हाम्रो यहाँको बुढो पाका मान्छेले के भन्छ जिन्दगीमा कहिले पनि थाना हस्पिटल र कोर्ट जानु परेको छैन धन्न राम्रै हो भन्छ सो दे टेक प्राइड इन नोइङ दैट दे डिड बट वी नीड टु रिमेम्बर दैट दीज थ्री प्लेसेस आर द प्लेसेस वेयर वी अफर सर्भिसेस टु हेल्प पिपल हो नि त हस्पिटल बिमार हुँदा जान्छ हैन कोर्टले न्याय चाहियो भने कोर्टमा जानु पर्यो थानामा इफ यु हेभ एनी ल एन्ड अर्डर सिचुएसन तर लट अफ आवर ओल्ड पिपल है दे टेक प्राइड इन स्टेटिङ अल दिस हो तर यसमा चाहिँ वी विल हेभ टु एन्करेज देम टु अप्रोच द कोर्ट हो अनि यो सर्भ तपाईँले नोटिस गर्दाखेरि दे बिकम भेरी एजिटेटेड सो यसमा चाहिँ तपाईँहरूले यु अल क्यान रिक्वेस्ट दि लर्नेड म्याजिस्ट्रेट्स द्याट पुलिस असिस्टेन्स दिएर चाहिँ हामी जाओस् किनभने द फ्यामिली इज भेरी भायोलेन्ट even my life is a danger भनेर चाहिँ you all can pass request for such orders to be passed all right एनिवेज यो अर्डर प्रोटेक्सन अर्डरहरू जुन हुन्छ त्यो त पुलिसलाई पनि कपी जान्छै जान्छ होइन तर त्यो सँगसँगै तपाईँले नोटिस सर्भ गर्दाखेरि पनि यु क्यान रिक्वेस्ट फर दिस काइन्ड अफ अर्डर्स टु बी पास्ड अलराइट देन ब्रिच अफ अर्डर्स जुन अघि म्याडमले भनिहाल्नु भयो इलाबोरेटली होइन सो इफ देयर इज अ ब्रिच अफ अर्डर the aggrieved person will have to inform the protection officer. Then protection officer ले चाहिँ कोर्टलाई immediately inform गर्नु पर्यो कि हाम्रो चाहिँ जुन अर्डर पास गरेको छ त्यसलाई चाहिँ ब्रिच भयो प्रोटेक्सन अर्डर छ तर भए पनि कुटाइदियो उसलाई पैसा दिनु मानेको छैन है सो यसमा द म्याजिस्ट्रेट क्यान एक्ट अन इट एन्ड आफ्टर द्याट इफ देयर इज अ ब्रिच अफ अर्डर इट अस्युम्स क्रिमिनालिटी राइट क्रिमिनल प्रोसिडिङ सो त्यसले गर्दा वी क्यान पास उसलाई जेल पनि पठाउनु सक्छ उसलाई फाइन पनि इम्पोज गर्नु सकिन्छ हो यसमा अघि आई जस्ट वान्ट टु टेक अ मोमेन्ट है अघि म्याडम वाज जस्ट आस्किङ मी एनी डोमेस्टिक भाइलेन्स केसेस द्याट वी केम अक्रस वेन आई फाउन्ड इट डिफिकल्ट टु एक्जिक्युट अर्डर्स भन्नुहुँदै थियो होइन सो यसमा चाहिँ वेन आई वाज इन गेजिङ देयर वाज दिस केस इट केम फ्रम द रिमोट बेल्ट he पाल्दा भन्नुपर्ने ठाउँको त्यहाँ रिमोट बेल्ट अफ यु नो गेजिङ आई थिङ्क मिस्टर सेशी यु नो राइट सो त्यहाँबाट चाहिँ डोमेस्टिक भाइलेन्सको केस आएको थियो हो सो द वाइफ वाज देयर दे ह्याड 2 चिल्ड्रेन हस्बेन्ड वाज कमिटिङ डोमेस्टिक भाइलेन्स शी फाइल्ड अ केस हस्बेन्डलाई हामीले नोटिस गरेर बोलायौँ है नाउ वेन ही कम्स बिफोर द कोर्ट ही इज अ झाँक्री रहेछ अब ही डजन्ट ह्याभ एनी सोर्स अफ इन्कम he basically lives on अब यता कसो घरमा बिमारी भयो के भयो भने पूजा गर्यो अब पूजा भइसकेर पैसा भन्दा बेसी गाउँ बस्तीमा के दिन्छ रक्सी राइट अब रक्सी खायो घरमा आयो मातेर डोमेस्टिक भाइलेन्स नाउ ही डजन्ट ह्याभ एनी अर्निङ त्यो अलैची त्यहाँदेखि देन द वाइफ वान्टेड मेन्टेनेन्स सी वाज लिभिङ सेपरेटली बट सी वान्टेड मेन्टेनेन्स नाउ ही डजन्ट ह्याभ एनी सोर्स अफ इन्कम गाउँ बस्तीमा त यसरी पूजाहरू गऱ्यो भने पनि कति दिन्छ बेयरली अब ड्युरिङ द्याट टाइम 100 रुपिस म्याक्सिमम 500 हुन्छ होला होइन त्यो पनि पूजा भयो भने अब इट्स अ भेरी कन्डिसनल थिङ अब स्ट्याग्नेन्ट इयरली स्टेबल इन्कम छ भन्नु पनि सक्दैन हामीले मन्थली इन्कम द्याट उसलाई यति यति दिनु भनेर सो नाउ हाउ डु बी इम्प्लिमेन्ट अब उसलाई कसरी चाहिँ मेन्टेनेन्स दिनु वी ह्याड अ भेरी डिफिकल्ट टाइम है आई ह्याड भेरी कोअपरेटिभ लयर्स अल्सो एट द टाइम देन हामी सबैजना बसेर त्यहाँको मान्छेहरूलाई पनि सोधीखोजी गरेर पुरा हामीले गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ we found that उसको घरको छेउमा चाहिँ he has a very small अलैची बारी it was very small तर रहनु चाहिँ रहेछ उसको नाममा थिएन उसको बाउको नाममा थियो नाममा सरेको छैन तर that was given to him so now what we that's the only thing that he has apart from that he doesn't have any income so what we did was we divided that into 4 parts one part we gave it to the husband it barely became I think something as big as this box अर्को 3 parts we gave it to the wife and the 2 children so we told the wife अब तिमी त्यहाँ अलैची रोप्ने कि सब्जी रोपेर पैसा कमाउने that's up to you but that's the only thing we could do but at least उसले केही न केही चाहिँ गरेर उसले अब पैसा चाहिँ त्यसमा निकाल्नु सक्यो त्यसले गर्दा हो so sometimes especially in the districts it becomes very very difficult to implement because we don't have employees I mean respondents who are working है daily wage laborers हुन्छ अब यो कन्स्ट्रक्सन सकेपछि उनीहरूको कामै हुँदैन भन्छ सो कसरी इम्प्लिमेन्ट गर्नु सो दिज विल बी द च्यालेन्जेस द्याट यु विल फेस वन्स यु स्टार्ट टेकिङ अप डोमेस्टिक भाइलेन्स केसेस राइट सो देन कमिङ ब्याक टु द रोल एन्ड रेस्पोन्सिबिलिटिज द काउन्सिलर्सहरूको लिस्ट तपाईँहरूले वन्स एभ्री 3 years रिभाइज गर्नु पऱ्यो है त्यहाँदेखि त्यो चाहिँ तपाईँहरूले म्याजिस्ट्रेट्सलाई प्रोभाइड गरिबस्नु पऱ्यो हो त्यहाँदेखि वाट एभर documents, reports तपाईँले बनाउँदैछ त्यसको तपाईँले रेकर्ड राख्नु पऱ्यो है बिकज द्याट इज अल्सो भेरी इम्पोर्टेन्ट फर यर ओन सेफ्टी एन्ड वेलबिङ अल्सो बिकज बादमा अकाउन्टेबिलिटीको लागि तपाईँले क्वेसन लाउन सक्छ है त्यहाँदेखि अग्री पर्सन है उसलाई अल पोसिबल असिस्टेन्स तपाईँले दिनु पऱ्यो हो ऊ मात्रै होइन उसको नानीहरूलाई पनि अन्त यु हेभ टु एन्स्योर द्याट दे आर नट रिभिक्टिमाइज्ड अर प्रेसराइज टु सेटल द म्याटर किन कतिवटामा चाहिँ के हुन्छ केस फाइल गरेपछि घरमा पुरा प्रेसर दिनु थाल्छ त्यो गरेन भने तेरो नाम अब फ्यामिलीलाई म बदनाम गरिदिन्छु या त नानी लगिदिन्छु या नानीलाई कहाँ पठाइदिन्छु होइन त्यस्तोहरू हुँदाखेरि चाहिँ सो इट बिकम्स भेरी डिफिकल्ट है सो तपाईँहरूले चाहिँ हेर्नु पऱ्यो अग्री पर्सनलाई त्यस्तो केही हुँदैछ भने इमिडिएटली यु हेभ टु इन्फर्म द कोर्ट सो द कोर्ट क्यान टेक हर आउट एन्ड किप हर सेफ एल्सवेयर विच इज सेफ फर हर अलराइट त्यहाँदेखि the other responsibilities of the protection officer is also apparently home visit गर्नु पर्यो of the shared household shared by the aggrieved person and the respondents. Preliminary inquiry courtले चाहिँ साच्चै नै उनीहरुसँगै बसेको छ छैन भनेर courtले inquiry गरेर तपाईहरुलाई duty दियो भने तपाईहरुले यो duty you have to fulfill this duty. Alright, if there is any clarification required, then अघि त्यो affidavit जुन छ त्यसको बारेमा पनि छ है, you all have to encourage the parties to file an affidavit that is correct. डाक्नु भएन भनेर है. अब यसमा another thing is also हामीले government employees when we see respondents maintenance like what we see is they apply for multiple loan and उनीहरुको even if the gross income is very high the EMI deduction देखाएर उनीहरुको जति net पाउँदैछ त्यो चाहिँ पुरा कम्ती देखाउँछ. So यसमा पनि तपाईहरु you all have to be careful because if he has gross loan is not the fault of the wife meta उले loan लियो. That does not say that उसको net त कम्ती रहेछ होस् अब net let's say his gross is somewhere around 60-70,000 net is coming around 10 you don't have to say अब 10 बाट तिमीलाई म 5 दिन्छु बुढाले 5 राखोस् न भनेर नो. Alright, यसमा चाहिँ you have to see he is capable of making 60,000 per month so he should be able to give at least 30,000 loan uski that is his headache. Alright, but that should not fall on the head of the aggrieved person. Alright, so for the learned magistrate this is also very important. Don't think that usko net 80 mate raisa he cannot afford. He will be able to afford since his gross income is that amount. Alright, you look at the gross. And then after that is restore the possession of the personal effects including the gifts and jewelry of the aggrieved person. Usko त्यो घरमा के सामानहरु कोही बेला त्यो when she's been domestic violence भएको छ भने especially physical violence and all that उ रातरात घरबाट भागेर निक्लेको हुन्छ नानी मात्रै बोकेर डरले है. सो उसको कतिवटा सामानहरु ल्याउनु छ भने त्यसमा protection officer can help get her back all her personal belongings. Alright, त्यहाँदेखि you can also assist the aggrieved person to regain custody of the children by allowing the aggrieved person to approach the courts. Alright. It is also the duty of the protection officer to protect the aggrieved person from domestic violence. Again, it's a repetition only. Now, one thing the protection officer will also have to remember is under section 33 of the Act, if you all do not discharge your duties, penal provisions are. And that is again imprisonment which may extend to 1 year or with fine which may go up to 20,000. You can't only live on this. So do not make the magistrates angry. उहाँले DIR file गर्नु भन्छ तपाईले राम्ररी file गर्नुस्. Otherwise, I do not want to see any of the protection officers going to jail or having to pay fine. All right. Just on a lighter note, but this is what the law says, so please be wary of this. I just wanted to draw your attention to that. Then, other thing is action to be taken. Rule 9 of the 2006 rules, there is action to be taken in cases of emergency. If there is domestic violence being committed, the aggrieved person does not have the time to go to the court. Maybe, like I said, the courts are in gazing. So the moment the protection officer comes to know it, you have to immediately help the aggrieved person. तपाईलाई aggrieved personले approach गरेको छैन या कुनै मान्छेले through phone email ले भने यो घरमा चाहिँ बुढीलाई पुरा कुटपिट हुँदैछ बुढीलाई पुरा हिंसा हुँदैछ भने चाहिँ you all have been given the power to immediately act on it without waiting for any order from the courts. All right. So त्यसमा चाहिँ तपाईहरुले पुलिसको असिस्टेन्स पनि लिन सक्नुहुन्छ. उलाई पुरा कुटपिट हुँदैछ उलाई घरबाट निक्लिनै दिएको छैन है. So तपाईहरुले immediately त्यहाँको लोकल पुलिसलाई भनेर चाहिँ गएर इन्टरभेन्सन गर्न सक्नुहुन्छ. Then you will have to fill up the DIR and without wasting any time, you'll have to approach the learned magistrates. Okay? So I think we're done with the role of protection officers. Any questions, Isma? Any clarification? Protection officers are okay, so अब तपाईहरु क्लियर भयो होला है तपाईहरुको रोल के छ भनेर DIR कसरी फिल अप गर्नु भनेर
I faced one difficulty as part of DLSC. As per section 12, even protection officer can file the application. But in most of the cases, victim or the ugly person is in need of urgent ex parte interim measure, and on the other hand, C is also entitled or C wants to apply for legal aid. So in that circumstances, we sometimes face difficulty because if C applies for legal aid, it at least takes 1 week. So in that circumstances, if protection officers be proactive to prepare application.
Why do you need 1 week to get legal aid? No. If the aggrieved person has approached you in court, then and there you can appoint a legal aid counsel. We've done that. It's another thing. Only through DLSC apply kariyo bhane. Yes.
In that circumstance.
No. Tada, if she's approached the court directly, see, I know you're sitting as secretary DLSC and you're also sitting as a learned magistrate, right? But you need to know that when you're sitting in court and somebody is coming to you, then and there, as a court also, you can give them legal aid. You don't necessarily need to say illegal aid. Oh, now I'll be secretary DLSC. You got so you can immediately then and there come down.
As a court, ma'am. So whenever the application is filed before DLSC, so in that circumstances, so we had requested, in fact, some of the lawyers to prepare the application immediately in absence of protection officer, because protection officer, there are one protection officer in a district, but in some cases protection officer may not be available at that point of time. So in that cases we had requested the lawyers to prepare application. So protection officer can also in other circumstances can also prepare application, because we hardly receive application from protection officer. So that I wanted to point out.
Okay, alright. इसमें चाहिँ see, courtman, like for instance, you have UTPs who come. Yeah, aggrieved person is a woman, so she is entitled to free legal aid. So courtman, then and there you can have somebody appointed in the court. Alright. And even for other UTPs, and not just UTPs, any person who comes, civil cases is all right. If they fall into any of the categories, right, then and there you don't necessarily need to divert them to the DLSA court appointment. Alright, if you look at the Legal Services Authorities Act, it says that even the court has been given the power to appoint a legal aid counsel.
Now, when it says as constitution, now what if it says that it is not to allow the laws, then is everything?
Yeah, UTPs no, because now in 2 districts we have the LADCs, right? So they will have to, like I think it takes a long time, and we have legal aid defense counsels being designated for each court. Namchi and Gangtok at least, right? Mangan and Soreng, Pakyong, or Maha, you have? Oh, legal aid defense counsel, you started there also? Okay, I wasn't aware of that. Pakyong also. Oh, but how are they managing then? Because it's very difficult actually. So for UTPs, you can't, because while you LADCS, you have to say that but for all these other cases, even civil cases and all, you have sometimes old people coming in who are okay, documents, income certificate, then and there you can appoint any lawyer who's available, the panel lawyer.
Since when the protection officers file DIR, can we rely on DIR even because that is not executed before the court, because we do not examine the protection officer, and in case if we have not examined the protection officer, can we rely on DIR on our judgment as an evidence?
Yes, because it is a record, it's been given in the law itself that it is a crucial piece of report that helps in determining the magistrate pass effective orders. Alright, so you can. It doesn't need to be necessarily executed, it's part of the court record only. Right. Any other questions there?
What is the proof that is required, madam? Is it a civil proof, or is it beyond reasonable doubt?
No. You go for civil preponderance of probability. It doesn't have to be proved. Like when you're passing effective orders, the relief is it's a beneficial legislation, so you need to remember that. Right? You do not need to be so strict with your rules of evidence also when you're dealing with DV Act cases also. Of course, the rules of evidence have to be followed, but criminal cases it's too strict. Alright?
Ma'am, I have one query, ma'am. Section 12 itself भन्दैछ कि प्रोटेक्सन अफिसरले पनि लाइक फाइल द एप्लिकेसन अन बिहाफ अफ दि अब्जेक्ट पर्सन भनेर तर वेन द ट्रायल बिगिन्स लाइक ट्रायल भयो भने चाहिँ त्यहाँनिर चाहिँ के हुन्छ भने प्रोटेक्सन अफिसर विल बी वान अफ द विटनेस किनभने डिआइआर हामीले भर्छ प्रोटेक्सन अफिसरले सो एक्जिबिटमा गरेपछि डिआइआर बुक गर्नुलाई प्रोटेक्सन अफिसर विल बी एक्जामिन त्यसले गर्दाखेरि अलिकति कन्ट्राडिक्टरी उयो त्यसमा चाहिँ कन्फ्युजन चाहिँ मलाई त्यसमा भएको
Confusion because of that. No, that is all right because see, it is again the law that has given you the power to file a complaint on behalf of the aggrieved person also, right? So when you're filing the DIR also, you're doing it in favor of the aggrieved person. Like for instance, when I showed you the form 1 now, you're filling up all the details. First part, who signs it? It's the aggrieved person, right? त्यहाँदेखि त्यसलाई चाहिँ तपाईँले काउन्टर साइन गर्दैछ नि त सो यु आर like if you look at it, of course you will be, unless if the aggrieved person is making false allegations, that's another thing, right? But in most of the cases you will be in favor of the aggrieved person. So तपाईँ उसको witness हुँदाखेरि पनि it doesn't create a problem too much. But usually protection officer like we don't, I don't need witnesses. During my experience, the protection officers बनाउँदैछ अहिले witnesses. Oh, okay. Alright. Usually protection officers need not be, unless if there's some clarification required, then the court may examine them as their own witness. Otherwise, the school protection officer is the witness banako khalke ta chaina. Sir?
Thank you.
Sir? Anything? So now we'll move to the next topic, which will be focused more towards the learned magistrates, and also I will talk a lot about the gender-sensitive conduct, right? Our judgments, I don't think I need to teach our working magistrates. You all are very experienced, right? So I don't think I need to teach you all how to write gender-sensitive. And I think you all are more sensitized on gender than we are, also the new generation, all right? So when we say gender-sensitive, right? The Supreme Court has held in State of MP versus Babulal, a socially sensitized judge is a better armor in cases of crime against women than long clauses of penal provision containing complex exceptions and complicated provisions. Alright? So, this is applicable not just to the judges but also to the lawyers, right? To also the protection officers. We need to be sensitive towards gender of any kind. When we talk about gender sensitization, we always think pro-female, right? That's the first thing that comes to our mind. But now we need to remember we also have the third gender, the LGBTQIA+, right? So we need to be very sensitive about gender equality, alright? So the gender bias even patriarchy, we should not promote it, saying that keta ho beura testai ta cha. Very common, I think, a gender biased remark that we have seen, right, is घरको सानो अब नानीहरु छोरा छ भने उनीहरु रुँदाखेरि केटी जसरी नरु त केटाहरु रुनु हुँदैन. That is something that these are the small stereotypes that we need to avoid. किनभने हामीले त्यसो गर्दाखेरि automatically त्यो छोराको टाउकोमा के जान्छ, म त केटा हो. He gets a masculine power, है, म त रुनु हुँदैन रहेछ. So if you keep bringing up your sons like that, I think they might turn into criminals, most likely, right? I'm not saying it's a guarantee. But also what happens is the drawback. And research really, psychologists do research with this. यसले चाहिँ के गर्दछ भने तपाईहरु जति पनि छोराहरु तपाईहरुले सानोमा नरुनु हामीले भन्दै थियो त्यो छोराहरु चाहिँ अहिले they having so much mental health issues because they are not being able to open up. उनीहरु इमोसनली हुनु सक्दैन किनभने they've been taught रुनु हुँदैन केटी जस्तै बेसी बोल्नु हुँदैन मनको कुरा डल्लै भन्नु हुँदैन. So they are building up everything inside. So what is happening? उनीहरुलाई नै it's a disadvantage नि त, right? So these kind of gender remarks, gender biased remarks, we have to be, I think, very sensitive, particularly more so in our fraternity. Alright? So I urge हामी participants like from now on we should really केटा हो पिंक लगाउनु हुँदैन, पर्पल दिनु हुँदैन, केटीलाई कालो बेसी लाउनु दिनु हुँदैन अब दो इनफ feel we have to wear black most of the time, right? But these kind of norms that we've created in a society without any reasoning, without any basis, we are harming our children. Either they become psychologically not well, right? They need a lot of therapy because conditioning, the social conditioning is. So it is very important for us to be gender neutral and gender sensitive. Alright? So gender sensitization is again the process of raising awareness about gender equality that I've already talked about and eliminating gender-based discrimination. Alright? It focuses on identifying and breaking down gender roles. You get a kamo, घर सफा गर्ने केटीको काम हो, खाना बनाउने केटीको काम हो, लुगा धुने केटीको काम हो, केटाको काम गाडी कुदाउने, बाहिर गएर पैसा कमाएर ल्याउने, है? So all this gender stereotyping roles will have to break it down. अब अहिले त lot of divorce, marital disputes also happening because of that नेता. किनभने अहिले त केटीहरू सबैजना काम गर्ने नै छ, हैन? तर अब पहिलाको जस्तै होम मेकर चाहिँ सम्झेर the girl लाई चाहिँ कतिको प्रेसर हुँदैछ. She's living with her in-laws, and even if she's not living with her in-laws, she has her own family. Office पनि जानु हैन. Office is also a stressful job, त्यो अब त्यसै अफिसमा गएर टाइम बिताएर आउने खालको अफिस पनि हैन, है? Almost, I think 90% of women in Sikkim are all working women. तर उनीहरुलाई चाहिँ बिहान अफिस जानुभन्दा अगाडि घरमा सबैलाई जानको लागि खाना बनाएर जानुपर्छ रे, ब्रेकफास्ट पठाएर नानीलाई स्कुल पनि पठाउनु अरे, है? Women who can do that, hats off, but it's not possible, I feel, right? And office ma, you have a stressful day, you come back, घरमा सबैजना रुगिरहेको छ, चिया बुहारी कहिले आउँछ र चिया बनाउँछ भनेर, हो? आउँदा आउँदै दुध पनि किनेर बिचारा आउनु पर्यो, त्यहाँदेखि चिया बनाएर सबैलाई, त्यहाँदेखि नानीलाई होमवर्क पनि गराउनु पर्यो, त्यहाँदेखि बेलुका खाना पनि बनाउनु पर्यो, किचन साफ सुधो गरेर त्यहाँदेखि सुत्नु गएर भोलि बिहान again every day when you're doing that, it's not conducive for the woman also, neta. I know अहिलेको जमानामा सक्दैन नि. And plus पहिलाको जस्तै ट्राफिकको कम्ती पनि छैन. अहिले to commute only in a place like Gangtok, तपाईलाई कति टाढो पर्छ होला भने तपाईको अफिस दुम्सेमा छ, right? ट्राफिक कति हुन्छ. Those living in Taduk, if your office is in Gangtok, 1 घण्टा 1.5 घण्टा त लाग्छ तपाईलाई बिहान आउनु जानुको लागि जाममा, हो? त्यो सबै गरेर त्यहाँदेखि घरमा यो it becomes very difficult. That's why marital disputes are because you're not being able to adapt. Other घरको बुढाले के सम्झिन्छ यो त बुढीकै काम हो, हामीलाई त सानोदेखि नै त्यही सिकाएर आएको हो, हाम्रो बाउले त केही गरेन, हामी पनि गर्दैन. So that's why this kind of gender, if we have sons, we should, I think, start training them to take care of the responsibilities, the household chores, as much as the daughter. सानोमा even we face that. छोरी हो अर्का घरमा गएर पकाउनु पर्छ, खाना पकाउनु सिक भन्थ्यो. And we used to protest so much. No, we are being educated, we are not doing that. Even if our parents, it'll be our cousins or your grandparents who will say that केटी भएर किन खाना पकाउनु नसिकेको, बादमा दुःख पाउँछ है भनेर, right? घरमा पहिला अब obviously that's something that we shouldn't debate on it. घर केटाहरुलाई मात्र पहिला खाना दिनुपर्ने रे, केटीहरु त बिचारा लास्टमा सबैलाई सर्भ गरेर मात्रै खानु. So these kind of small things which we don't realize, but it's happening within our society. And Sikkim, we don't even claim to be a patriarchal society. Imagine, we think women are very forward. We are not a matriarchal also, but we think it's an equal society. But despite that, education within this, at the same time, we are conditioning them to be homemakers. Yes, that's nothing wrong in that, right? But we're expecting them to multitask too much, and it's, humanly not possible, I think, right? So that's why we need to be a little bit more easy on the women also, and we need to start training the men. I don't know how the men feel about it, but I think we need to start sensitizing the men that and it will be really good if the men themselves start sensitizing their son about it rather than the women having to do it, If you start taking up the action, you teach your kids through example, right? Not through words. That's how they learn. So त्यसले गर्दा I think it would be a big step towards gender stereotyping. So त्यहाँदेखि when we talk about gender sensitization, the aim is not just to generate awareness, right? But it is also to encourage behavior modification. I mean, we need to modify. When we go home, we need to think what we are saying, how is it impacting the child? Alright? How will they see gender as? So that's why we need to be very careful how we are conditioning our children or ourselves at home. Alright? And it has to start with us. I will start to there's nobody who's going to start with it. Another generation also will still have a lot of domestic violence cases. And this is the reason why we have domestic violence also. I was reading this book, it was on the men who commit violence on women. What I've read is, usually unaru ketaharu, let's say, if they get drunk, unaru tas khelnu gayo ya unaru त्यसै साथी भाइहरु रक्सी खानु बस्यो अरे उलाई के कुरामा चित्त बुझेको छैन अफिसमा he had a tough day उलाई अफिसमा उसको बसले गाली गर्यो he cannot obviously बससँग झगडा त पर्नु सक्दैन अब काम जान्छ साथीहरुसँग ड्रिङ्क गर्दा साथीले के भनेर उलाई जिस्कायो त्यसमा पनि उ साथीसँग झगडा पर्नु सक्दैन because physically strong men are supposed to be physically strong compared to women, right? So that is the reason that last makyo all that frustration builds up, they come home. We women are seen as the weaker sex in terms of our physique, right? So we are vulnerable in that sense. So jo cha alikiti weak cha telai nai hitnu पर्छ नि त. We've seen that this kind of psychology works. कोसँग रिस दिइरहेको हुन्छ त्योसँग हामी झगडा पर्नु सक्दैन तर जो चाहिँ अलिकति वीक छ त्यसको माथि रिस देखाउँछ. Maybe it could be a domestic help was also. अफिसमा बसले पुरा गाली गर्यो रिस उठिरहेको छ. घरमा गई चिया खाँदै गर्दाखेरि मेडले के गरेर अलिकति काम बिगार्यो. You take out all the frustration. बिचाराले एउटा सानो के मात्र काम बिगारेको हुन्छ. But we scold them to such an extent. So that is what? It's a power play. I know we are not being able to exercise authority with those superior to us, so the ones inferior like हामीले गर्दछ. So domestic violence पनि it's actually that only. Then बढी अरूसँग दाज्नु सकेन बाज्नु सकेन लास्टमा के हुन्छ बुढीले बिचारा सने हो त्यसलाई नै कुटपिट गर्यो for no reason, right? So त्यसले गर्दा चाहिँ behavior modification is very important. And as protection officers, as judges, one of the most important qualities that we need to cultivate in ourselves, imbibe in ourselves is empathy. Until and unless we don't have empathy, we will not be able to do justice to any person, right? Empathy doesn't mean blindly believing. There could be cases where the law is being misused also, right? But when there are genuine cases, and we need to understand that for somebody to approach the court, it takes a lot of guts. मान्छे त्यसै बिचमा आज उठेर म आज कोर्ट जानु पर्यो भन्दैन. They do a lot of thinking. समाजले के भन्छ होला, फ्यामिलीले के भन्छ, मेरो फ्यामिलीले के भन्छ होला, मैले बुढामाथि केस गर्यो भने, है it takes a lot of courage. यसैलाई सहनु नसकेर मात्रै their last resort is होस् म कम्प्लेन नै गर्छु अब पुलिसकोमा जान्छु या म कोर्टमा जान्छु भनेर. So that's when we have to exercise empathy. Yes, it is true. In courts, we'll have a lot of cases. The domestic violence case that has come to you might just be one of the many cases that has come to you. But for that person, it means a lot. She has come with the hope of getting justice, right? So even if you have 15-20 cases listed in a day, you have DV, so by then you are tired, witness cross-examination took the whole day, you are very irritated because the lawyers were asking all irrelevant questions. But regardless, that person is still there with a lot of hope pinned on you, alright? So you'll have to be empathetic when you're dealing with these kind of cases, alright? Not just DV Act cases, but any kind of gender bias cases with somebody, please deal with it with a lot of sensitivity and empathy, alright? And another thing, when you start stereotyping, especially judicial stereotyping, right? We've seen those comments being made by so many courts. She was dressed provocatively, that's why she was raped. I know we have media's comments. So this as the judiciary, if it starts stereotyping, what happens? It causes re-victimization. Already victimized by but हामीले अझै बेसी स्टिरियोटाइपहरु पनि झन् बेसी हुन्छ है survivors rape survivors So we need to be more careful about this. And also it impedes access to justice. Then if they see a conduct of a judge or a protection officer, they will think twice. Also, we've seen like I mean, I don't know how many of you heard, but I have heard a couple of stories where the nurses used to be very mean in old days, not now obviously. Nurses used to be very mean to pregnant women when they used to come for delivery. I've heard those stories. I don't know how far is it true, but I've heard that. But that is, I think, lack of empathy on them. Because you need to understand what that person is going through during labor. It's not going to help the situation. So similarly, we also have a lot of duty cast on us. We need to deal with it. Because if we don't deal things with empathy and all, last my cue, they will stop coming to you for justice. Also, the protection officer, the judge for the we shouldn't allow people to feel like that, alright? Because we hold very important possession in with whatever profile that we have, alright? Then so the gender sensitive conduct is mindful inclusion of gender specific experiences and rights within courtroom procedures, aiming to uphold dignity, equity and non-discrimination, especially when it's not just women but also now the third gender, the LGBTQIA+, alright? Then the courtroom as a symbol of justice must reflect fairness, not just in law but also in practice. When we are talking about equality, justice, our job is not to deliver justice only through our judgments. Our conduct itself in the courtroom also, right? And not just in the courtroom also, when we're interacting with each other also. There shouldn't be any kind of bias. Because personally, if you're being so biased, your integrity as a person who can uphold justice gets, I think, compromised. Right? So we need to be very careful how we are conducting ourselves also. Because people have a lot of faith in on the judiciary, alright? This goes especially to our young magistrates who will be joining the service soon, alright? Then this conduct involves using respectful language, irrespective of who that person may be, what they have come for. Please be respectful in your conduct, right? Don't use discriminatory procedures, and you should have sensitivity towards all genders. Then no victim blaming, sexist remarks, intrusive questioning, alright? And then make sure your infrastructure is also adequate, like separate waiting rooms for men and women, the third gender also accessible washrooms, alright? Those all have to be in place. So what is gender insensitivity in courtrooms now? Alright, so like I said, stereotyping, victim blaming, use of patriarchal logic. Keta ho, teste to, if teasing ko case. Keta to raise teste to, abo rati ekle in the theory se jiska aisa nahi. No, we cannot. Alright, this is again victim blaming, using the patriarchal logic to question a person's behavior, attire, or even past sexual history. Alright? Insensitive cross-examination. Avoid any kind of aggressive or humiliating questioning to survivors, especially. Alright? And the language and address. Do not use of masculine generics or degrading references to women or poor individuals. Alright? We have to respect the pronouns that they want to be, addressed with. Then when it comes to infrastructure, it is lack of separate meeting rooms, accessible facilities, and psychological support services. Alright? So the gender stereotype remarks would be, he is a man, he should have protected his family. What would you use? Not to gender stereotype. Anybody? Let's examine the circumstances. This I've taken it from the NGA's website, alright? Let's examine these circumstances without gender bias. Okay? That's how boys behave. How would you use it in a more gender neutral term? All actions must be judged against the law, not norms. Okay? Then I can't believe a woman would behave like that. Let's consider only the facts, not assumptions. Right? Then this is a classic women's dispute. What would you say, Mrs. Ishi? It's a civil matter involving parties. Alright, you cannot be gender biased at all. Then, like how we've seen in so much in media and all, she was dressed provocatively. Clothing is irrelevant to legal facts. Alright? So again, Madam was also stressing on Article 40, equality before law and equal protection of law. So all genders will have to be given, extended this fundamental right. Alright, that will have to ensure. Okay, so we'll just do a small exercise again, gender appropriate language. This also I've taken from NGA's website only, alright? So how will you define a harlot or a slut or a whore? Being more gender respectful, how would you do it? Not gender stereotyping.
Sex worker?
Just a woman. I didn't say prostitute. That's just name calling, they're just a woman, alright? So please avoid. Now hooker or prostitute, yes, that we use sex worker, alright? The woman was very hormonal. How will you say that now? We'll have to use a more gender neutral term to define her emotion. If she's crying, we won't say she's hormonal, that's why she's crying. She's just crying because she broke down, right? So that's how we should be more sensitive. Okay, unwed mother, what will you say? The new magistrates? Huh? Just mother, very good. Western woman? Woman. Seductress? Adulteress, seductress, what will you say? Woman. Just woman again. Adultery, luckily now we don't have adultery anymore in the new PNS, alright, but adulteress also, we can just use the term that woman who was engaged in sexual intercourse outside of marriage, alright. Bastard, alright, it's non-marital child or a child whose parents were not married, okay. Career woman, chaste woman, how will you say? Just a woman. Now you're confident about this, fully sensitized. Concubine, mistress, what will you say? Woman. It will be a woman with whom a married man has had romantic or sexual relations with. Alright? Then, dutiful, faithful, obedient wife. Just wife. Very good. So, ravished. How will you say? Gender neutral or being more respectful, how will you say that? Sexually assaulted, harassed, raped, alright? So again, the stereotypical ideal, women are overtly emotional, illogical and cannot take decisions. Is this true? Not at all, right? A person's gender does not determine or influence the capacity for rational thought, okay? Women should do all the household chores. Men and women are physiologically different. A person's strength does not depend solely on the gender, but also on factors like profession, genetics, nutrition, and physical activity. Right? Women are more passive. True? Not at all. I know. People display a wide range of personality traits. Both women and men may or may not be passive. Women are not more passive than men as a rule. Alright? These are the norms that we need to get out of our system. Women are warm, kind and compassionate. True? True. Not necessarily. Compassion is an acquired characteristic that is unique to every individual. Individual of all genders can possess or not possess compassion. Alright? All women want to have children. True or not true? Deciding to become a parent is an individual choice that every person has the right to make. Right? Women are more nurturing and better suited to care for others. No. People of all genders are equally suited to the task of caring for others. women are often socially conditioned. Or even we are conditioned. You are be a mother, the maternal instinct, whatever. I think ladies are like, the maternal instinct right? So that social conditioning has to be removed. Alright? Last time only, I was just watching this small video on how the wife decides to take a small vacation, and the husband decides to babysit the child. He's not babysitting, it's his child also, no? So such a wrong phrase to use, saying that I'll be babysitting the children. You can go take a night off with your friends. It's not like that, right? Everybody has equal responsibility. A wife should take care of the husband's parents. Again, not true. The responsibility of taking care of elderly individuals in the family falls equally on individuals of all genders. This is not the sole remit for women, alright? Then, women who work outside of home do not care about children. Again, not true. Working outside of the home has no correlation with a woman's love or concern for her children. Parents of all genders may work outside of the home while also caring for their children. So I think now everybody's sensitized. Well, if you all would like to read more on this gender stereotypes, we have the handbook on combating gender stereotypes. Okay, published by the Honorable Supreme Court. You will find it on the Supreme Court's website. So you can go through it. That is also very helpful when you all are writing judgments to learn how to use more gender neutral terms. Alright? So now, to end the session, just a small thought. Judges must rise above patriarchal biases and ensure neutrality, fairness and constitutional morality in their rulings. Okay, thank you so much. Any questions now on this? Fully sensitized? Thank you.